So the time is 5:05. Got a big agenda today, starting with 41 Highland for the first, roughly 45 minutes. And I know, Michelle, we left you with several follow-up questions. We should probably start there. And then I think the larger topic is going to be the repairs, both, the town's perspective that you've pulled together, Michelle, as well as the meeting that I know took place with Clark Brewer last week. So why don't we do it in that order, just so we can get the shorter items off more quickly before we get into the deeper.
Okay, so to start off, I think a number one question we had was the full and fair, let me see exactly how it was stated. It was full and fair cash value definition.
Yeah.
It's something we were working off of. So we have the true definition of this. It just came in. And really all they did is they took it right out of the CMR manual. So
And they being council, or who's?
So council weighed in with the same definition, so it's consistent across the two different parties we asked. So it's the assessed valuation of the building, not including the land, as recorded in the assessor's office of the municipality at the time of the building permit is issued, or an equalized value at 100% valuation is the true definition of it.
Okay.
It doesn't seem to get us any closer than anything.
No, I don't think it really does. I mean, this is just straight out of the CMR. What is equalized value? I'd found this and I don't really know what it means.
Yep. So I went back to our assessor and asked that exact question, and they're doing some due diligence on their part. But the way they understand it is it's either the value they have on the property, or the value placed upon the property by an independent appraiser.
Okay. And I also I also was reading 521 CMR 5.38, okay, which is where I think that definition exists, or maybe I found it somewhere else. But what jumped out at me is that it states very clearly that any building that is owned or built or renovated by the Commonwealth, the assessed value is the full and fair cash value is replacement value. Which begs a couple of questions. The first is, does our assessor have a range of valuation alternatives that he or she is allowed to choose from, right? Do they have some, because certainly people who do independent valuation certainly have different valuation methodologies that are acceptable. And secondly, if any state money comes into this, which I believe CPA funding would, does that make it a renovation by the Commonwealth technically? Which means then the full and fair cash value is the replacement cost. It sounds like we've got a cursory response from council, and I don't mean to put you on the hot seat, Michelle, and expect you to answer this, but that's kind of like the logical next question to them just sending us the code.
I'm just taking down a note to ask them.
And I'm happy to join a call with the assessor if that helps.
It may.
And and the other thing is, we may just it may be helpful to just understand when the assessor should update the assessment, given it probably hasn't been done since the building was built.
We did reassess a couple of properties in town when we went through our insurance. I think it was last year or 2 years ago. To make sure that we could get full replacement value of the buildings if need be.
So do we boost the assessment to replacement cost in that scenario?
Not full replacement cost, because we have a rider, if you will, on the insurance that covers all buildings.
Yeah.
So we brought them up, but not to full replacement value.
Okay. Sounds like council didn't give us a great answer, and you and I probably need to have a conversation with the assessor and council just to get to the bottom of this, so we're not going in circles. Or maybe I could put it
I
in
mean-
an email and we can send it to them. I don't know, whatever you suggest.
Is this something where I'm getting the sensation that maybe this is a unanswerable question that's better off not being asked, right? I mean, if there may not be an answer here, it sounds like there's a lot in for interpretation. I don't think that there's any intention here to avoid doing anything. We're just trying to do the best job possible with the building. I can't imagine that anything we're doing would run afoul of these things. And outside of, I don't think we're going to get yeah, you're fine from kind of anybody on this. I don't think that's I don't think it's in the cards. I don't think, council's going to say, yeah, we've got we can defend a $30 million valuation here. So part of me is wondering if it's smart of us just to kind of attack the building and almost not worry about it. I know that's a little bit head in the sand, but this may not be set up for us to get that clear answer at all.
Yeah, Corey, you may be right. We may not get the right answer, or get a clear answer, whatever that is. But to ignore this means we have to assume that we're going to do 100% code compliance based on current code. Because we will. I mean, if the denominator is too small, your numerator will get you to 30%. With a few $100,000 worth of repairs, and then that automatically triggers a very, very big reno bill.
No, I understand that. I think my point is we may be able to work under the assumption that the denominator is very large and we are not going to run into it. But I don't know if someone's going to give us a legal opinion which says, okay, I mean, we probably have to dive into if lawsuits have ever been filed against historical buildings, what's precedent on these sorts of things. So I'm wondering if by asking a lot of questions, we're not going to get any closer to the answer, where if we're going to attack the building the way that is being talked about, it doesn't sound like we're in violation of any spirit of anything. And so
I guess I'm not sure what you're suggesting. Are you suggesting that we just plan to do 100% code upgrade? Because
no, I'm suggesting we do exactly what the building needs, and that's it. Right. And then
but my point is you can't.
Because who?
Because your numerator will exceed 30% of the denominator.
But we don't know what the denominator is. That's the conversation. I'm saying maybe we can just say the denominator is whatever we say it is, or we don't even have that calculation out, right? Someone has to challenge us on this. I mean, that's, somebody would have to say, you have to stop repairing that building because the cost exceeds it. I mean, I don't think there's any automatic trigger mechanisms going to block us from spending money. I know I'm a little bit on unclear ground here, but I think the fog may be how we have to get through this. Michelle, am I making any sense at all? Okay, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get too far into it then.
Yeah, you are making sense. Is the challenging party the building inspector in this case?
No, it would be the attorney general or somebody that files suit against the town because of CMR. So then they'd have to argue that our basis for our valuation is wrong, right? And then we're kind of going into a tornado. And again, we're not trying to avoid anything here. It's not like we're trying to prevent people from getting to the town for ADA or anything like that. So if we use a $15 million valuation to do $6 million of work, I don't think anyone's going to challenge us on that. But I also don't want to make too much noise about it because I don't think we are going to necessarily get somebody to rubber stamp a X million dollar valuation either.
Yeah, I just don't know where the challenge comes from in terms of forcing compliance. Anyway, sounds like we don't have an answer today. I'm certainly going to do some more legwork to try and get to the bottom of this. I don't think we need to discuss it further as a committee, but I'd certainly be happy to do the work to get to an answer. I'm not particularly comfortable not having one. Michael.
I disagree. I disagree with Corey's take, and I disagree with pushing off. I think we need to have a very solid foundation for any proposal. And that includes what the valuation of the building is. And so if that means taking the time and trouble to be able to defend our approach, which is tied to the valuation of the building, then we need to be working on that. And we need to be able to defend anything that goes into this equation of how much money is going to be spent on this proposal. And I think it's not fair to people who are not familiar with what we're doing on capital budget to assume that, well, if capital budget put together this formula, it must be right, when in fact we're putting together smoke and mirrors.
Any other thoughts?
Well, it's pretty clear. What you ought to do is get a professional appraisal. I mean, that's straightforward.
Really?
I mean, this is not very hard. You just go get one.
Look, getting a professional appraisal is not hard. It's the question is, what is the definition of appraisal? Is it market value? Is it replacement value? Like, I doubt Tom would know the answer to that. It's a code question.
I think Tom would know exactly the answer to that. That's what he does for a living.
For
And who is
municipalities?
Tom?
Yeah.
For municipalities? Okay.
Yeah.
Tom
Tom?
Conscious, Atlantic Valuation Group in town.
Yeah. Just put up whatever money it takes. He'll probably want $10,000 to do it or something, but have the town should
Yeah. I
find
mean,
out what the number is.
I mean, we can, okay. I still want to know what the definition is. I mean, this is a legal and code question before it is, paying anyone to do any analysis. And I also want to know if the state even cares to get a third party analysis, or if they want it from the assessor's office. I mean, I have a problem bringing in a pro to do this, but only if that's even, relevant in the context of this code, which it may or may not be. I agree with you, Ralph. He's perfectly capable. I'd be surprised if he's done municipal buildings, but I just don't even know if it's relevant. Michelle, how about the Department of Revenue? Would they have a view on this? Like, what regulatory agency enforces this?
I wouldn't even know the answer to that, Brian. I'd have to wait to hear back from the assessor.
Okay. Tell you what, instead of burning right now we've got 7 people online all speculating on why don't we just do some more legwork to get to the bottom of this? I think that's the best answer.
Could I add one other thing?
Please. Yeah, anyone that has any further comments, I didn't mean to cut it short. It doesn't feel like we're moving towards resolution, but please.
Oh, I just want to make sure I'm reading the same definition everybody's reading. So I'm reading 521 CMR. There's just a whole document full of definitions from the Architectural Access Board. Is that what you're reading?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
One thing which, going through valuations of other stuff, I don't know much about it, but I do know that any sort of alterations or, work you've done to the building is very important. So Michelle, off the top of your head, do you have any sense of the last 10 years, how much we've spent on this building?
$250,000.
All right, never mind. Then in that case, it's the most unimportant metric there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
fine.
paint, it's the elevator, and it's some rotten siding on the backside.
All right. Well,
And paint, sir.
Okay. All right. So that's the full and fair value question. The second question that we had for follow-up last week was about the occupancy permit that we can expect from the building inspector. I think we wanted clarity as to whether or not that was, it was going to be for permanent occupancy. Now that based on the repairs that have been done, or whether there are additional things that need to be done for us to permanently occupy the annex, assuming that the other side is shut down. And then finally, what would we need to do to the old town hall side in order to permanently occupy that?
Yeah, so I did ask him the question, as far as permanent occupancy. Right now, what he could issue is temporary occupancy for 6 months. He indicated, that the fire separation was just that, was to provide temporary, occupancy permit for the annex side. And he said it wasn't intended to ever indicate that there could be a permanent occupancy of the annex while construction on the historic side was being done. So as far as a permanent occupancy permit, I think you'd have to have sprinklers, you'd have to address your egress. And I think he named maybe one other thing that had to be addressed for permanent occupancy, but that can't be issued until at least the sprinkler, fire alarm, and egress is addressed on the historic side.
And what's the egress issue, Michelle?
Based on occupancy, there has to be an egress of the second story from the historic side. And currently we don't have one that complies.
Is that because the stairway is not safe to walk on, or is it too narrow, or what?
I believe it has to do with the configuration of the staircase down to historic town hall.
Okay. So in a reno plan, we might need to put in a new staircase. Is that one of the assumptions? Okay.
It's something that's been discussed. I know they were talking around some ideas about, does it have to happen? Where does it have to be? Could it be as simple as, a fire escape egress versus an egress for the public to use as a normal egress? I don't know that there's a conclusion on that yet.
Okay. So still work to do.
So
Okay.
let me make a comment here. It seems as though we move the goalpost every time we turn around. I read, and I think also Ellen Marr read the last paragraph of the approval from John Hallen of January 26th. And there was no word temporary there. She noted it, I noted it.
Yeah.
I don't like the goalposts constantly moving for whatever reasons they shouldn't move. We either have people of integrity who say what they mean, and they don't change them when the politics get tough. But in fact, we've got a problem where we've got the politics now getting in the way of actually the words that one can clearly read. So I hate to say that. We've been in politics for a long time here.
I won't comment on the politics, but certainly your read of the letter is correct, Ralph. There was no, there's nothing in there that suggested it was temporary. Whether it's sloppy drafting or whether there's something else going on, I'm not going to speculate. Any other thoughts, comments from others on the call?
I'm not overly concerned about the temporary thing, just because at the macro level, I think there's an understanding that, we didn't add a door and then the whole building is fine, right? So I think that I think it's fair to state that temporary or not, the work is not yet done. So I don't think we've been given a timeline like we had before. So I'm not too worried about the temporary, because it's just, I think it's an understanding that, it's not like we can leave the building for the next 50 years, right? It still needs more stuff. So I don't want to get too caught up into the definition of that. I'd rather just focus on moving forward.
The background, though, I think you have to sort of pay attention to that. I don't know if any of you watched the select board meeting of the 27th of February. It seems to me that based on what I call a straw vote, the intent of that board is to move everybody to One Pleasant Street sometime in May, irrespective of whether or not the town votes or doesn't vote for any kind of a temporary or other kind of lease. That was a straw vote. It isn't a permanent vote, can't be that, but it's as close to I can see to what people want to have happen. And how do you make that happen? You make it happen by making the existing building, the 41 Highland Street, temporary. And that's the argument. So where you are now and where we are now is having to vote on whether or not we support or don't support a lease agreement, which I thought was the permanent lease agreement. That is the one that might have something in the order of 5 years on it. But not voting on something they're going to do anyway, which is to occupy the building sometime in May, if they can, irrespective of any vote of the town meeting or whatever we say. That's where they are. It's kind of a remarkable situation, in my view. And so the word temporary matters. If in fact you think the temporary also means that you're going to have to go into One Pleasant Street as a result of the word temporary. That's where it's all there. Sorry to be such a sort of, I don't know, reading between the lines kind of individual, but I'm reading between the lines very clearly. And I heard that and listened very carefully to what was said at that meeting of the 27th. And clearly the push is to make that a way, that is the temporary may move, to make that a way in which the town actually gets forced into ultimately remaining in One Pleasant Street, irrespective of the fact that half the town didn't want that. So really, it's quite a remarkable thing going on.
Okay.
So,
look, I think we're getting to a point of speculation that I'm not comfortable with at this point.
It's not speculation. They are planning a move. Ask Michelle if they're planning a move.
Look, we all watched the board meeting, and I concur with you. They're planning a move. I'm referring to the speculation with regards to all the other moving pieces. And I really just don't want to get into it tonight because, in particular, it's not on the agenda.
Well,
there's no discussion of One Pleasant on the agenda, and there's no vote on the agenda tonight.
Well, the vote, if there is a vote, actually, is the vote as to whether or not we do or don't support the lease. That's the question before us, right?
But it's not before us tonight, Ralph.
Why not?
Because it's not on the agenda.
But it's been on the agenda up until now.
It's not on the agenda tonight.
Well, that's quite remarkable.
It's not remarkable. It's not remarkable at all. The situation is evolving, and we went as far as we could go on it last week, and we're covering the other items from last week's agenda that we did not get to. That's what that's where this week's agenda picks up.
Okay, so in other words, we're not voting on something that we thought we were voting on last week, but we're not voting on this week.
I think I don't think we were ever voting on it last week. It was on the agenda as an option, not an obligation to vote.
The Capital Budget Committee,
yes,
by law, does have to vote on lease agreements.
I'm aware.
Okay.
I don't think the select board is done with what as I said last week, we don't have a warrant article yet. There's still a lot of things I think that are not yet answered. So what I said last week was, even if I wanted to make a motion, I wouldn't know what it was because we don't actually have anything in front of us. We got a lot of speculation. We got a lot of talk. We don't have a lot of things in writing that's actually a request. And I think there's a lot of questions we all have. Never mind the fact that it's not even here yet. So Ralph, I agree with your sentiment. But I also think that there's a lot of time between now and when or if something officially comes to us. And I think that pathway will, I think, reveal the strength of the whole plan.
Okay.
So Ralph, I apologize, but at the beginning of the meeting last week, you asked what we were going to do. And I was very clear that the agenda stated discussion and vote, which gave us the right to vote in the event that people felt comfortable doing that, but not the obligation to vote. And, consistently polled the committee members throughout the course of that meeting, and people weren't comfortable voting. And I don't think we're any closer to being comfortable voting tonight. I don't even think we have to poll people. So there's no vote on One Pleasant tonight. In fact, there's not even a discussion of One Pleasant on the agenda, and I think we should be very cautious about spending more time talking about One Pleasant, given it's not on the agenda. We've been through the two follow-up items from Michelle at this point, with regards to 41 Highland, which is where we left off on last week's agenda. The next point of discussion is the 41 Highland repairs. And I know, Michelle, you and Brian Joyce and team and Nick and others have done some work, creating one scope and an estimate. And pursuant to the discussion in our meeting last week, there was also a meeting with Mike and Clark Brewer and Corey Evans and you, Michelle, and a handful of others to go through the piece of work that Clark had put together. So that's the next item is for those two scopes and estimates to be discussed. So shall we start with the work that you did, Michelle, with the rest of the town, and then we can go through Clark's analysis, or would you prefer to do it in reverse order?
Well, I just want to state that it's difficult to have this conversation here before the select board meeting, which is in 2 hours, because it's the cart before the horse, right? So I don't want them hearing it secondhand when it was really their initiative to begin with to come up with these costs. So I'm having a hard time,
Okay.
sharing this information now versus if this meeting followed the select board, to be fair, because they're going to be seeing it for the first time at 7:30. So I don't really know how to handle this. I can tell you we did meet. There were some great conversations. We discussed a phased plan, which is indicative of what the select board asked for. We did talk about a repair cost versus a renovation cost and what that would look like. We talked about phasing a plan, which was very similar to being able to maybe house some employees here while the plan was phased versus relocating all the employees. So all the components were there and discussed. I'm just not comfortable sharing any facts or figures yet until the select board hear it.
So let me just ask a question, because is that going to be discussed in executive session, or is it going to be
No.
presented to them in public session?
Presented in public.
I'm not sure I understand the sensitivity presenting in public to us first if it's not going to change between the two meetings. Others on the committee may disagree, but I mean, it's going to be public information in 2 hours. It's going to be the same public information. I don't mean to put you in a hot seat, but I mean, we're trying to make progress. Michael?
I would like to respect and honor Michelle's request. She's handling this professionally, and if she feels that really this is premature for us to get the full rundown right now, until she has a chance to report to select board, I respect that, and I would encourage we just follow her lead on this.
But I suggest perhaps a counterpoint, which I don't feel strongly about, so I'm just going to toss it out there. The question was that document already shared with the select board members? Therefore, is it already a public document technically, which means sharing it with the committee would just be kind of normal process? I mean, we post stuff online all the time. People show up to the meeting and ask questions about stuff that's posted. I understand the sensitivity. I'm just tossing it out there. But if you don't want to, I'm fine with that too.
I'm just not comfortable with it.
Okay.
Fine.
Let's stop there. I'm not. Michael's point is accurate. We shouldn't be pressuring you to do something you're uncomfortable with. I guess I would just say that in 10 years on this committee, we regularly received, and in fact almost always received, capital proposals and cost estimates on things before the select board, and frankly, we typically sorted through it and presented it to them. So this is a little odd, and I'll touch base with that committee and just ask that we not get what is clearly going to be public information in a matter of hours. Let that sort of gum up our progress. It just seems crazy, but at the same time, Michelle, Michael's point's right. It's if you're not comfortable, you're not comfortable. What is certainly not the select board's information is, Mr. Brewer's presentation, which is something that we discussed last week as being part of this agenda. Is he here this evening? I'd love to hear from him.
Don't see him on.
Would it be appropriate just to recap the meeting we had, Brian, for the whole committee, or would you prefer, is that still a little bit backwards?
That would be good. Michael just came off mute. I assume that's because you want to say something.
Yeah, Clark is not on. We
Okay.
did not invite him. So I would not expect his presence today.
I'm sorry, Mike, I did let him know that we were meeting at 5
Oh,
o'clock. Yeah,
Okay,
So-
then I'd give him a chance then, but thanks.
Mike, do you want to reach out to him and see if he wants to join? In the meantime, we
Sure.
can, just shoot him a text, whatever the best way. And in the meantime, we can recap the conversation. While Mike's doing that, Corey, why don't you go ahead and get started? Or Michelle, you're welcome to recap the conversation too, but either way. Anyone who was there?
I'll defer to Corey because I left, so I want to make sure he covers the whole.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Michelle's short email really applies to the whole meeting. It was an extremely productive, extremely thoughtful conversation. Clark's a lot of the discussion was about avoiding triggering, level 3.
Hi, Clark, it's
sort
Mike.
of.
Good. I'm on the Capital Budget Committee meeting right now.
Yep, you are. Okay. But I don't want to speak for anybody, but the people that were there from the town as well, everyone seemed to be in general agreement that a repair plan, if that was the select board's choice to move forward with, would be something that had the potential to be strategized and executed on. And it was very, I would say, positive discussion in that regard when it came to what the priorities were, including adding fire suppression to the historical section, how much disruption this historical section, working on the historical section would have, a lot of head nodding, and I came away from that with the understanding that certainly if it was the focus to repair the building was the focus that was determined, that there's probably a lot of learning that could be done on how best to do it. So it was great, really across the board. I think when it came to actually putting the problems first, not the solutions first. So great meeting. I'm trying not to speak for anybody, but also recap it. So that was a little tiptoe dancing there. My apologies.
Clark should be joining us shortly.
I guess my question is, was there sort of any evolution of thinking with regards to, the plan that Clark had set forth that came out of the conversation? Changes in scope, changes in timing, changes in sequencing.
So the big question for when it came to Clark's phase plan is, I think Clark has it in 3 steps where you kind of move everybody throughout the same building. I think the one point of further exploration that has to get done on his plan is whether moving people throughout that same building like 3 times would introduce more delay than if we just moved everybody out and kind of did everything at once. I think that the idea that we can work on the historical section because there's no one there right now, that seemed pretty easy to understand. But I do think that repairing the annex part, once, I think what John Helen said was, once the scope is determined, we'd have a better sensation of how you'd execute it. But it certainly was something which no one felt that the annex was not savable, or I think John and Brian and even Clark all agreed that the annex needed some very specific repairs. So we didn't know how much time that would take, but understanding how much time it would take would then lead us down the path to determine whether or not it's smart to lease space or move people temporarily or just have people stay home for 3 weeks. I mean, there's kind of a whole gamut of options there.
Okay. And how about evolution on scope? And I know Clark's with us, and we're going to turn this over to him in a moment. So evolution, and I know, Michelle, you had pointed out we need new windows. What else? Is there any other major items that came
I
in?
walked away from the meeting. I think Clark's scope, I think it was generally agreed upon that Clark's scope really captured, the majority of what needed to be understood to be done. I think even everyone at the table was really in agreement about that, about how Clark had scoped it for sure. So it sounded to me like that was a pretty good starting point, even though it was, done on a volunteer basis by such an upstanding member of our community.
Right.
You can throw tomatoes at me when you drive by, Clark.
There you go. Mr. Brewer, welcome. The floor is yours. I think we've gotten glimpses of this proposal that you've prepared, whether it be at select board meeting, and also here. But it's important to hear it directly from you and really get the full rundown and have the committee have an opportunity to ask meaningful questions. So thanks for joining us.
Sure. And one of the things that I've been looking at today is the 2018 budget that EBI put together, and trying to look at some of the items. Another new elevator, probably not necessary. Paint and exterior repairs are in that budget. Those which have already been done. Without really getting into all of the piping changes that were recommended and getting into the nitty gritty, there was about $1 million from their 5.8 that seemed like we wouldn't be doing, either because it'd been done already or it was replicating things that were already in place. So that's a rough number. The EBI budget is a good baseline, I think, to build the cost estimate, even with adding with the cost estimate and the scope, even with adding miscellaneous scope that we haven't talked about yet. And John may have some additional scope items to just adding the sprinklers, which the code consultant said, if you do these things, then all code issues are resolved. There's still other condition issues, that EBI brings up. The sewer line is 100 years old, and at the very least, it might need to be checked and cleaned out instead of replaced, that kind of thing. But Brian Joyce has an estimate from the engineer to do the sprinkler design for the historic side of somewhere around $30,000, and the construction cost estimate by EBI has wet sprinkler and dry sprinkler in the attic. It might be possible to have wet sprinkler everywhere if we insulate the attic of the historic side. But the drilling down on the scope of work with a list of outline items, and then understanding what the code implications are of work that's repair, upkeep, as opposed to improvements, like, for example, paint and carpet and refresh in the 1987 section, and the offices in the historic section. They definitely need to be done. And that can go a long way to making those spaces decent. Partial bathroom reconfiguration and gut on the second floor also need to be done, but those are repairs and upgrades as opposed to new work, like the sprinklers. The sprinklers would be new work, insulating the attic would be new work. And the code allows some flexibility under the International Existing Building Code to look at what you have to meet current code, and look at your existing conditions and make reasonable modifications. So I mean, I really think the next step is to drill down on the costs and drill down on the scope, and come up with something that's realistic, that everybody understands, and actual numbers can be put to. What questions do you have for me?
I have one detailed one and then one big one, and others should jump in too before we get into the big one. But just to circle back, I thought I heard you say that Brian Joyce has an estimate to do something with the sprinklers for $30,000.
That's for engineering.
That's just the engineering cost.
That's right.
Okay, not the installation cost.
Yeah, the EBI cost estimate, and let me just it has a wet sprinkler and a dry sprinkler. Let's see, EBI has a new fire service for not a lot of money, under $2,000. It has wet sprinkler of 74,000 and dry sprinkler of 20,000 for the actual construction cost, plus 20% plus 40% for
Escalation.
prevailing wage.
Prevailing
Escalation
wage,
and then
yeah.
prevailing wage. I did talk to Peter Pratt. Apparently he's no relation to the former Peter Pratt who was involved with town government a while ago. And yeah, he thought that a 20% inflation made sense. And Michelle confirmed that he also said that a 40% escalation for prevailing wage. But if we've lowered the baseline by $1 million and whatever makes sense, I think that there are things that need to be done right away on the historic side, and then there's things that could be put off or tested or vetted to determine what that scope of work is. You were asking about sprinklers. Anything else on that?
No. Okay. So the 30K was just the engineering. The actual sprinkler upgrades more than that. Okay.
Yeah, 74K plus 20K plus escalation.
Sorry, plus escalation, you said?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So it's still not hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, but I thought
No,
we
but under 200 grand for sure. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more if they get into something that's messy.
okay. Okay.
I mean, my engineer thought based on the head count, it might be around 100 grand, but he was, just shooting from the hip.
Is it, Clark, is it driven by head count or is it driven more by just linear feet of pipe and the number of sprinkler heads that you need per room?
Well, my mechanical engineer is McRitchie over in Braintree, and it's based on a cost per head and square
Sprinkler
footage.
head, not
Yeah.
human head. Okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
Okay.
No,
Sorry.
not it has nothing to do with occupancy or people.
Okay.
It's,
Thank you. I
sprinkler head.
misunderstood. Sorry.
No worries.
Doing my job to provide some comic relief, although that was unintended. Okay, so that's for sprinkler heads. And is the thought that this would have to go through the attic, or is there room between the drop ceiling and the in the second floor, for example, and the and the structure?
Well, I mean, if you're gonna sprinkler the historic building, you're gonna have to do the attic, whether it's
Okay.
a wet system, which the whole building, the heated spaces would be, or a dry system in the attic. You're also gonna have to put sprinklers in the basement, even though nobody's gonna use those old jails, I don't think. And whatever other miscellaneous space is down there underneath the auditorium.
You'd have to sprinkler the crawl space under the auditorium.
It's actually, it's standing room,
Yeah,
marginal, but yes,
okay. So it's 4 floors of sprinklers, basically. Attic, 2 floors occupied, 1 floor beneath.
that's right. Yeah, and the
Yeah.
EBI's takeoff has 12,000 square foot for wet and 3,000 for the dry.
Which is the attic.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
But we might want to insulate anyway. Again, we don't without doing a careful code analysis based on existing building code, you're you haven't confirmed yet what might be triggered for upgrades other than what you want to do.
You're saying if we trip the sort of the financial metric that requires you to upgrade everything.
Right.
Yeah. We
And based on the, I mean,
We
the
touched on that
new
earlier,
energy
didn't we?
code is, it's tough. I've attended, I think, 25 or 30 seminars over the last year on what the new energy code is, both for commercial and residential work, and it's aggressive. Not that we would want to do something with the envelope. The 87 side envelope wise is pretty good. It's got 2x6 walls, fully insulated. It's got double bats on the roof. Hallen says that there needs to be some repair. Some of the insulation has fallen down based on people going in there and doing work or whatever, but it's not bad.
Okay. Okay, that was my small question. My big question is I was hoping you could just walk us through the actual plan and the sequencing that you had laid out, just so we understand the scope of, what actually would get done. And I hear you loud and clear that, this is preliminary and that, people would need to get in and really come up with detailed scope. But I just, we're throwing a number around without at least me having the benefit of the context of what that includes, absent going to the EBI report and looking at it specifically. So I just think that everyone on the committee would benefit from me walking through this. But before you do that, I just want to see if others have comments, questions, suggestions. Okay. And let me just ask specifically, Michael, is this, is this what you would like to have covered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And just to recap, there were several of us following the vote last fall who felt that remaining at 41 Highland was possible, and we were interested in finding out if we were right. And based on our meeting of last week with the key players, which is Michelle, with Brian Joyce, and with John Hallen, we seem to have agreement that yes, there is the option of rehabbing or repairing 41 Highland in both its wings. So that's why we're going to all this trouble. And that's everything I want to add right now.
Okay. Clark?
Yeah, so let's see. Should I share my screen and pull up my plan?
That'd be great.
Okay, can you see
Yeah.
can you see the layout?
Yes.
Is it scaled to so basically what I did was try to get a sense for what was going on with the square footage. We got about 23,000 square feet overall in the building, including the auditorium, which is multifunction space. We still use that for meetings sometimes, of course, voting and the drama club. But I think this summer there was an environmental fair that took place there. Obviously we don't need the vaults. The vaults exist on all 3 levels. And adding some bathrooms for this as a public function definitely makes sense. So we've got about 13,000 square feet of actual office space. That's the 3 levels of the 1987 section and the 2nd level of the historic section. And generally speaking, the 87 section, every architect that was given the permission to redesign and rethink our town hall did away with it, right? And I will say, as an architect, here's the secret: we don't like having to deal with other people's old buildings. The historic thing, we get it, but it doesn't get our creative juices going. And I would say the other architects back in 2008, 2014, 2018, 2021, they did a great job of kind of a historical context, atrium, open space, with the 2021 version being about 7,500 square foot bigger than what we have now. So about 30,000 square feet with a cost estimate of 22 million or with escalation 26 million. I don't know what it is. Which is that increase. The committee, obviously, and their architects thought that we needed more space than what we have now. And their plan was to add more square footage to town hall than what's being proposed for One Pleasant Street in total. And that sort of jumped out at me. But let me just go through the phasing. And I will say, yes, I'm a volunteer architect. Yes, I was hired by Stasco to do a 10,000 square foot new building. But I've been following this town hall issue very carefully and closely, and in fact working with John Hallen to not condemn the whole building because he has issues with the historic side. And I'm glad that has borne fruit. I did recommend my code consultant to him, and then took a step back and let whatever happen. With that said, the 1987 sections, they need to be gussied up, but they're in pretty reasonable shape. We need to put a roof on the whole thing, and I think EBI's estimate was something like $102,000. Let me just pull that up. Let's see, the roof replacement, $102,000. Obviously with escalation, that would be more like 160, 170. Michelle may have new numbers on that, but so getting back to
in the EBI report, and I just want to put this in perspective, is that just for the shingling, or is that like all of the flashing, everything else that would happen with a roof replacement? And the reason I asked, just so you understand, is I'm trying to reconcile in my head different numbers that we've seen. So we put out to bid a new roof just on Old Town Hall. They came back, Michelle, I think in the 200s, 230-ish. Now there was a structural issue that exists over in Old Town Hall, which everybody's going to need to address sooner or later, that was in there, but I don't think that was more than like it was a small portion of the total cost of that roof replacement. So I'm just having trouble reconciling how, a public bid that we ran gave us a roof of, 200 plus for just half the building versus, what EBI came up with for the whole thing.
Well,
Just half as much for the whole thing.
Well, part of it's probably timing. If this 102 number was a 2018 number and it didn't include prevailing wage,
Yeah.
then you can see you can get to 200 pretty fast. But as long as I have this reinforcing the floor underneath the auditorium, because the current floor they've determined is designed for 50 pounds live load instead of the
Yeah.
100 pounds that's required now under the current code. Again, that might be one of those triggers, but there's the easy way, and EBI identifies two methodologies. One is to put a column in the midspan of each beam under the floor, and the other would be to reinforce the existing beams and don't put a column under. I think, throwing a Lally column that's good for 10,000 pounds a piece or for $100 and some concrete's probably the easy method to beef up that floor. And again, you just have to see what the problem is, and then ask the questions. What are the options?
Okay, so we just leapt from one issue to the other. So up in the roof of Old Town Hall, there's a cracked beam somewhere that needs to be replaced, and that's what was being contemplated in that roof replacement estimate that I cited. I don't know exactly what it is, but one of those structural members.
Yeah, this number
is an issue.
It says including gutters and downspouts would be just the roofing in terms of a structural repair. I haven't seen that report, but I have no doubt that it probably is true.
Yeah, so I'm just more than anything, I'm not even saying it's true or needs to be replaced. There's definitely a beam with a crack in it. Whether or not it needs to be replaced is a different issue, but I'll leave that to the pros. I was just trying to reconcile the cost. So when the cost of that roof bid came in at over 200, part of that, right, was not roof at all. Part of that was something was not factored into the EBI plan. But I guess your point with regards to the auditorium is EBI has included some repair in there for that structure, or no, or that's something incremental in your plan?
Not specifically.
Okay, so they both need to be included.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, I just wanted to understand.
No worries. But just while I have this out, repainting the exterior, that's been done. The repairs to the windows that's the garage. Partial replacement of siding at addition, that's been substantially ameliorated. The repairs for the original town hall windows, those were redone about 10 years ago. There's a number of line items in here that probably don't have to be done now, or not necessarily in the next 10 years, but done eventually. And the overall, I mean, the thing that kind of jumps out at me is, gosh, to move over to One Pleasant Street with moving costs of $500,000, it seems like we could get a roof and sprinklers for that amount, and perhaps something more to make the historic side code compliant and be on our way to having a rehabbed full town hall. But I'm still jumping around here, and these guys have common area and office space, bathroom, of something less than $1 million for the interior work. Let's see, there were some big numbers. A new elevator at $250,000, or rehabbing the existing one. Hey, I mean, it may make sense to replace as opposed to keep the old one. But you want to make sure that you didn't count these numbers twice.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's either one or the other, not both. If both of them end up in this number, then that's something to get a handle on. and again, this is sort of mile high, and we want to make sure that you have when you have a concept plan like the one I put together, there's and you have a budget that was done 5 or 6 years ago, and trying to merge them into something that's relevant is the task at hand. And you know, citing the couple of examples, like it's either one kind of elevator or another. The windows have been done, what the sprinkler costs are, the exterior restoration that was outlined. Those are all things that, that either fall in the plus or minus column for cost estimating.
Okay. Just a quick question about the windows. The EBI report was done after the restoration of the old town hall windows, but my understanding is there's need for windows in the annex as well. Is that something that's in the EBI report, or is that information is my perception perhaps not accurate?
Well, EBI does have I think window. Well, I only found window replacement at the garage,
Okay.
and window replacement sealant for windows and doors, and window replacement on the historic side. But those were done relatively recently prior to the EBI 2018 report. So I don't think, and with interior with interior storms, again, it's possible that that would fall into the do it later column, unless we have a energy code trigger that we're trying to deal with.
Sorry, I've been asking all the questions. I know other committee members must have some.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like once you've updated in phase one, the historic side,
Mhm.
both the office space, the auditorium, the structural work, and gotten the sprinklers in there, there may be some other minor things that need to be done. John Hallen wanted some extra room in the corridor. It might also involve some fire doors for the stair. But we still have to get a more detailed scope or outline of scope of work for that first phase. But if it's some of the electrical work has been done, but not all, and then if we're talking about systems, sprinklers, dealing with fire ratings, and then doing the work, I think that there's going to be some. We want to do the upgrade in terms of finishes anyway, but the finishes aren't expensive, nor are they time consuming.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Right, I was just gonna, I think this is all great, but I also think that what we need to kind of focus on is at a macro level. To what Mike just said earlier was exactly true, which is, a phased approach to repair 41 Highland seems like it should be possible. And we have an idea here, and as Clark just said, this is all really preliminary. But, I think as far as we're concerned, our discussion is it's possible. So this should be explored like fully, and not to the end of how we're not spending $20 million again, but even just to get to phase one. What is phase one, and what is that going to cost? And then is that executable? I mean, I think we can get into the details here, but all these things are going to change perhaps drastically between now and whenever an official proposal comes out. But the takeaway is that it's possible. And I think that somebody on another board needs to make the determination that this is something that, and perhaps that Michelle was alluding to, that this is the path that needs to be chosen and attacked. That way we can be serious about it. We can take, I thank Clark, I thank Mike, I thank Mr. Dormitzer, I thank everybody who's who's done work on this so far, but I think now it's time for someone else to pick this up and make it a priority, make it a policy, and start working on it, because a lot of this is going to change. So in this discussion, I'm really happy with where we are, and the details I think are going to get flushed out. But I think there's enough here that it needs to be, taken up seriously.
Michael?
When we met with John Hallen and Brian Joyce and with Michelle, John Hallen made the point that this is all well and good, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. There is a necessity to commit to completing all 3 phases. And I'm not sure how you structure a direction, but I do feel strongly that John Hallen is right, that we really do need to make sure that we complete phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And that there is a commitment on the part of the town, whether it's through the select board or through a citizen's petition, but some kind of commitment to these full 3 phases, and have them complete. Gosh, there's one other thing, but I'll let that go for now. So that's one thing I really would like to urge. Oh, one other point along these same lines. Where we as a town have missed the mark since 2008, if not 2012, is that in my view, we have not held anyone accountable for the cost estimates. It seems that our different town hall building committees, who have spent so much time and effort and brain power, were never given the responsibility. Maybe that's something that never should happen, but they didn't have the responsibility to see to it that we were meeting a cost ceiling.
Right.
Select boards come and go. So to assign that responsibility to a select board, I don't know. But some body, some entity needs to take ownership of seeing to it that these phases are completed and completed within a certain price cap. And so I want to advocate for that as we go forward in building this proposal.
Mike, I mean this with all the love in the world, but I don't think that's in the physical realm of possible. I mean, so I appreciate that you entered it saying we need to see all 3 phases through. And I agree with that as a concept, but we have no idea what those are and how much that is going to cost. I mean, if it costs 12 million?
Yeah.
What then? If it costs 15 million, I think every stage of this, the only one thing we've learned over, I don't know, 50 years of combined, more than that, 100 years, is that costs are always much higher than we anticipate. And I think I don't think we can say, well, we're going to do phase 3 for $6 million and have any sort of expectation that's going to be the case. And I do think that if you say, well, we know what phase 1 is going to be, and we know these are all high priority, then we need to decide what the other things are. I think that after we get phase 1 done, we may say, this is not going well, this is going well. We may have the appetite to spend more money. We may not have the appetite to spend any more money. So I'm a little worried about us assuming we can get the whole phase 3 thing done and have a sense of how much it's going to cost with any sort of accuracy, without spending, again, and I'm not a big fan of spending any more money studying this unless we know we're going to do it. I don't want to spend another $200,000 studying all 3 phases and figuring out how much it's going to cost. I'd rather just spend the $200,000 to put a roof on and all this other stuff. So, but I'm not as concerned about at the end of phase 3 how much we spent, because I feel like we are better suited if we make the decisions every step of the way based on how things are going, rather than jumping into it with a preconceived idea to say, well, we're going to hold somebody to the $12 million thing without us having any idea what we're going to run into in the interim, or any idea what things are going to look like in 5 years. So I agree, and I'd love for it to be the case that we just say, yeah, it's going to be $7 million and that's it. But that's just not how this ever works. So I encourage us last meeting, but also let's not get too far down into hopes and dreams about how we think this is going to go, and just start relying on our institutional knowledge of how this usually goes, and then figure out how we can best ensure that the process is under control and doesn't spiral out. Because I don't want us to get into a $10 million project that turns into $20 million project and it's too late. So there's kind of a lot there. And my apologies for being kind of scatterbrained. But I'd like us to get a handle on just phase one as close as possible, execute on that, and then figure out, we can still keep developing the other plans, but I don't think we can have all three phases. I don't want to spend the money on it, and I don't want to rely on a cost estimate, which I know is just going to be completely, erroneous at the end of the day.
What you say, makes sense, certainly. I just don't want to lose focus on a commitment to getting the 3 phases done. It's very early days, and obviously we can't make any kind of commitment. But I just want to build into our proposal that our intention is to complete all 3 phases as cost effectively as we can, and complete the project. And I still leave the open question of, this project needs to have somebody, whether it's an individual or an entity, a group, be accountable for its direction and its completion. How that happens, I don't know. But for any major project, you need to have somebody accountable for its success, so there's no finger pointing.
Who's gonna drive the bus?
Yeah.
And typically it's been the town hall building committee who's been charged with driving the bus. But like when the 2018 version came in at 12 million, that seemed like too much, and then the 2021 came in at almost twice. I think everybody kind of freaked out. Like, oh my God, there must be some options that might make sense. Maybe, if that committee had been given a budget of 12 million, maybe they wouldn't have added the 7,500 square feet to the total program space. And frankly, every client that I serve has to make sometimes hard decisions based on meeting a budget.
But Clark, I
as an architect, have to make difficult choices, not necessarily.
So Clark, let's just remember correctly how all that ended up. I mean, I remember very clearly the process to which I think we were at a point where the town hall building committee was looking at 12 to 14 million,
Right.
and making that space any smaller made it a 12 to 14 million dollar building. I mean, they took square footage away to the point where it was going to cost what it costs. And I think, the year before COVID, we were all looking at a $14 million project, and it looked great. There was no,
right,
outside of us being in fantasy land, which is now obvious that we were, and hindsight is, as Howie the plumber would say, hindsight is 50-50. That's a joke. It's just, I think there was no way at that time you could say, okay, this is going to be a $26 million building at the end of the day. So it's not that there was at any point a decision to say, yeah, we're going to double the cost of the building. With the metrics at that time, when you looked at the data, it was going to be a 14, maybe $16 million project. And the numbers made sense because of what we were getting, and we couldn't make it any cheaper. What I'm saying is, with this, we're going to run into the same thing. We're going to run into the same thing here. And I think I agree with Mike. I'm on board for fixing this and getting through phase 3, but I don't think we can reasonably expect that we're going to make some decisions here to keep it within budget. It's going to explode. And that, the exploding budgets of the other town hall building committees, it was never a point where it was so clear that they could project out 5 years of inflation. That's just not where the facts were at that time. I'm apologies for interrupting, but I want to make it clear. It wasn't that at the time it was a $20 million project. At the time, it was still a $14 million project.
So,
Right.
so just to put a couple of sort of hard points behind what Corey just said, it started as a $14 million budget. They drew the building based on needs, okay, which is, you know, an extraordinarily subjective issue, particularly when, you know, the needs were coming from the employees and included all the storage for all the rooms full of documents that we had actually paid $250,000 to shred, which is part of why the square footage ballooned. But ultimately, you know, the building was drawn, and then a current market dollar per square foot number was slapped onto it, and the project came back at 16. Okay, just like that. And Corey's correct. I pushed them to cut a few thousand square feet out of the building, and the problem is that taking commodity square footage out doesn't reduce the cost of things like elevators and roofs and the number of stairwells that you need to have, or sprinkler systems or anything else. You don't get a 1-for-1 dollar, you know, a 1-to-1 ratio in terms of or a linear ratio, I guess I should say, in terms of removing square footage and removing cost. And so, you know, we pushed them to reduce square footage. It contorted the architecture of the building, and frankly only took out $200,000, which was counterproductive. Then what happened is COVID hit, obviously, which took us from 16 up. And then very interestingly, over the course of about 4 months, the price went up about 25% again. And that occurred when they changed the estimating methodology from a dollar per square foot factor to an actual line by line estimate for the cost of doing that project. So, you know, we went from this sort of very high level, broad brush, here's what it's going to cost per square foot, to actually figuring out what it was going to cost, you know, for each and every item in the building. And the price went up 25% when that happened. And then we put it out to bid. And, you know, some of the bids came back absolutely off the charts. I mean, our HVAC system, you know, went from $2 million to $3 million over the course of a month, just because one person showed up and bid, and that's the price it felt like. So, you know, the public sector bidding environment, it's great to, you know, to talk about how we're going to cost control this. We don't have a lot of control, and people need to understand that when we start down this path, whether it's a new build, whatever it is, having been through 3 of these now, they all take the same path. I'm not really sure I've learned anything that would allow me to avoid it.
Well, it is a different animal to contemplate rehab with repairs that it can be done on your own timeline.
That's
And
for sure.
getting bids. If you don't like the bid, then you look at the scope again and then rebid. It's extra effort, but in terms of the actual costs and committing, you got some flexibility.
I completely agree with that. I also think that when people know you're doing it piecemeal and not, you know, throwing tens of millions of dollars into a project, they're probably a lot more competitive with regards to what they bid.
Right.
I do concur with that. You know, the flip side of that is you've got a never-ending, you know, slowly evolving project taking place with the employees in the building, which we can't lose sight of.
Yeah, I still think that
that's the flip
with
side.
John Hallen's separation, that it allows the historic side to be a complete isolated work area.
Yeah,
And
that's an
whatever,
easier one. There's no
whatever
question.
those upgrades are, and then if we're just, the roofing isn't going to affect the 87 section, or and if we're just talking about paint and carpet and some windows, those are basically basic repairs that can be done very quickly.
Yeah. So just a comment, and I think we need to move on. We've got other teams waiting, and we're way beyond the agenda time slots. But you know, you've set forth a 3-phase. I mean, this may be a 2-phase or even a 1-phase, depending on how you do it. I guess Old Town Hall is going to take a lot longer, so maybe it's a 2-phase at least. But I hear the point.
Yeah,
we need to commit to doing all of it. But just encourage people to remain open-minded as to whether it's 2-phase or 3-phase or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, or it could be 4. I mean, phase 2 and 3 are relatively minor.
Yeah.
I threw some budget in there for adding dormers in the back to add office space for the second floor, but you know, again, it could be more phases. But with that historic side isolated, it makes sense to get that as close to what you need for the next 20 years as possible, and
Agreed.
then pick away at the 87 section.
Okay. Is there anything else that we should touch on before we move on to the capital requests that are in front of us this evening?
Yeah, just some next steps. Very briefly, we should put on to our agenda for our next meeting, meet again with Michelle. If not, some representative from the select board plus advisory for continued discussion to see if this is a viable option.
Okay. I will. I've heard you. It's a discussion that needs to take place. Whether it's next week or not is an open question. And as we're running into this evening, we're seeing that this topic tends to occupy a lot of clock time. And we've got a couple $1 million worth of capital budget requests that need to be reconciled between now and town meeting. So I think we're going to need to start to partition this from, from the regular town business, out of respect for the departments that frankly need what they need now. So yes, this discussion will happen, whether it's next week, whether it's a special meeting. I don't know. Let's see what we learned from the select board meeting tonight and whether or not others are ready to have that discussion. Is there anything else on this? Okay, Clark, thank
Thanks,
you for your time and your patience and your work on this. It's very helpful.
You're welcome.
Okay. And my apologies to library, fire, and police who have been waiting patiently. Why don't we jump straight into the library request if we have somebody on?
They're on their way in.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Megan James. I'm the former library director. I just moved my position to HR and community services. But I'm here because I submitted the initial request and I want to support Bronwyn, who is our new library director, in our request for a new carpet for the children's room.
All right.
So we are interested in replacing the carpet in the children's room. It is 21 years old at this point. It's original to the renovation. We received a quote, and we'd like to use our CLT funds to do that. So we're not requesting funds from capital budget. We're requesting funds to be able to use our funds from the library trust takeout. Our budget forecast right now is that we will have the funds to be able to do this, as long as our pavilion fundraising continues to go the way that we like it. And so we're asking, I don't want to say just in case, but we're asking to plan to ensure that if we do have the money in a couple months that we think we're going to, that we're going through the correct processes and getting approval from Capital Budget Committee.
Okay, so the bottom line is this will be funded by CLT, not by capital. It's okay. So it's a request for a capital expenditure, but not for capital funding. Okay,
That's correct.
all right. Can you just give us a quick overview of cost and how you arrived at this vendor and whether or not there are any concerns around it, or do you good to go?
Sure. So we are working with facilities. They have identified a carpet that they've started using in all of our public spaces. That the demonstration showed that if you use a Sharpie and draw on it, you can actually get that Sharpie off this particular carpet. So we love that.
Sounds fitting.
We are interested in carpet squares. So in case, the Sharpie doesn't lift this one time or it rips or something like that, we can have some replacement. The total cost, let's see.
I have it.
Thank you.
27,906 and
So, yeah.
85 cents. 28,000 essentially.
Okay. So bottom line is that Nick Berardi selected this product or recommended this product, and this is a vendor that he's comfortable with and a bid that he's comfortable with.
Yes.
Okay.
We would have to go through the formal bid process because it's over the 10,000, but this is kind of our mark to know how much to ask for and how much to plan for.
Okay. Michelle, just on a procurement perspective, do they have to go through a bid?
So no, they have to obtain 3 quotes.
Okay.
They have to solicit 3 quotes.
Okay.
And then they'll be good to go. Anything under $50,000.
Okay. Perfect. I don't have any other questions. Any other members of the committee? Okay. Given this one isn't even a capital request, a capital funding request, it's a capital spending request. Or do you guys want to vote this right now so that library's done and on their way, or do we? I mean, this isn't,
Let's vote it.
this isn't a prioritization issue versus other capital requests. This is their request to spend their money. So
Still comes in front of us. So let's.
it does because it's over 10 grand. But Nick's vetted this. It's good to go. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Mike Dick, I'll move that we accept the library's request to spend CLT funds of 27,906.85 on new flooring. I'll just leave it at that. New flooring. Is that good?
Can I just suggest that we change the word accept to recommend?
Recommend?
Yeah. Anyone else? Like to second?
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Roll call vote. Susan Franklin,
And Franklin, I.
Corey Evans,
Corey Evans, aye.
Francine Lyons,
Francine Lyons, aye.
Michael Dick,
Mike Dick, aye.
Brian Host, aye. Ralph Dormitzer, want to give us a thumbs up? All right. Megan Bronwyn, thanks so much.
Thank
Megan,
you.
And let's just say hello to Bronwyn and welcome, and we'll look forward to working with you.
congratulations
Mike.
to both of you on your new roles.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you all.
Have a great evening.
Take care.
All right. We made up a few minutes. Let's move on to fire requests.
Hello, everyone.
Chief, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Doing okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So what I've requested for this year for FY25 is to replace our command vehicle, C2 vehicle. It's a 2012 Tahoe. It has 71,000 miles on it. It's 12 years old. And right now it's right in where the capital plan is for replacement. Costs $64,500. Is broken down into purchasing the vehicle at $49,000. Lights, the light package, another $9,000, and then purchase a radio for another $3,000. So we'd like to do the same thing like it did with the current C1 that I have now, which is a 2021 Ford Police Interceptor hybrid. So it'd be a combination gas and battery powered. which I have been using for the last 2 years, and I find out that I don't go to the gas pumps as much as I used to when I had the other, I had the 2012 Tahoe, and when I had the 2009 Ford Explorer. So I probably maybe go to the gas pumps every other week instead of once a week.
So this vehicle is identical in terms of the way it's outfitted?
That's my plan. That's what I got the bids for, was to do the exact same thing that I'm driving right now.
Okay, makes sense. Just to keep the fleet uniform, keep it simple. Okay, so there's no change in scope versus the last one that we did. You know, cost is obviously up, as are the cost of all vehicles. Question with regards to the hybrid. I know when we brought one in for, you know, for fire and one in for police, I think there was some concern initially that there were some issues with the police one. At least, how has your performance been and your reliability?
The one I'm using, I have no complaints. It's been very reliable. There was one minor programming problem, but brought it back to the dealership, and you know, a couple days later, it's solved. Again, our vehicles don't tax the electrical system as much as the police vehicles do, you know, because they have the lights, the sirens, they have more electronic demands on their vehicles than we do as the fire command vehicles.
And the program issue you had, was that in the really early days of the vehicle, in the first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. Let's see, I took the vehicle over in April of 22, and it was like the summer of 22. It was a programming issue.
So shortly after you got it, there was a bug. They fixed it. It's been fine ever since. Okay, cool. Just you know, these hybrids, I think we wanted to try them and see, and it was early days for that new model, and sometimes, you know, it turns out to be a vehicle that you don't want in your fleet. But it sounds like you like the vehicle and you'd like to continue to build out the fleet.
Yeah, as a command vehicle, I think it's perfect for what we do. Myself as the chief of the department, the assistant chief of the department, is perfect.
Great. Well, you live in it, so that's what matters.
Yep.
Other questions from other members of the committee?
I just wanted to know what we're doing with the current vehicle. Is it getting traded in, or?
No, so the current vehicle we're going to keep, because right now under the collective bargaining agreement, we have to sometimes provide a shift commander vehicle, and this vehicle will serve that purpose. Over the last year or so, I've been looking to roll off or get one of Chief Quigley's roll-off vehicles, but he's had some problems trying to roll one off. And when I did get an estimate to outfit our side of the house of using as a fire command vehicle, change out the lights, change out the radios, it's $11,000 additional cost to put into a vehicle that we're going to get that's about 8 years old, that has about 80,000 miles on it. So I don't think that's worth putting $11,000 into. Plus the vehicle that we'd use, we know it, we've had it in our fleet, we've maintained it, we don't have to buy any additional equipment for it. It's ready to use. And it will meet the needs of the collective bargaining agreement that we have with the union.
Can you explain a little more about that? I mean, we haven't been through a lot of fleet discussion with you, because you generally don't run a very large fleet. But as a committee, we're extraordinarily sensitive to fleet growth. We tend to buy things and not get rid of the old things, and the fleets grow and grow and grow. Which increases obviously the capital requests. So what is it that's driving the need specifically to move from 2 command vehicles to 3 command vehicles, given we've never had 3 in the past?
So one of the things was the staffing issue. So right now, in a staffing issue, if we have 5 members on duty, 4 members go out the door and we leave 1 member behind. Now the shift commander is assigned to the one piece that goes out with 2. Now, if we have 5 on duty, the shift commander can flow freely through town in his own vehicle, go to the calls, and then leave. If a second call comes in, he can leave the first call and respond with the 5th member who's been left behind the station to the next call. So therefore, we at least have a minimum of two people responding to each call.
But I'm confused. Does that mean that there are times right now when there is no command vehicle down there? So you take one home, the assistant chief takes one home, and there's no command vehicle down there. Is that what it comes down to?
Correct. Correct.
So how do you handle that situation when that arises? And how often does it arise?
So it arises maybe a couple times a week. I don't have the exact number for you, Mike.
Mhm.
But what happens is the second engine will go out by themselves, or the fifth person will go out by themselves. And depending on what the first call is, eventually we'll get a unit to clear up and meet the second engine. But right now, because the shift commander is tied to that other engine, right now the shift commander can't leave the scene. But if we have this command vehicle, the shift commander can leave the scene with 3 people operating if he feels necessary, and then move on to the second call so that other individual isn't responding by themselves.
All right, can we make a case that adding or taking your existing C2 and turning it into a shift command vehicle will reduce wear and tear on some other vehicle, like an engine? Or whatever you use to shuffle people around?
Yeah, it could reduce wear and tear on the lead engine, because now the lead engine doesn't have to be constantly bouncing around town all the time. The shift commander is in this command vehicle bouncing around all the time.
Okay, thank you.
Is it?
And
Sorry, go on.
no, I think Brian was going to tee off your point about the fleet growth, John. So right now that the shift command vehicle, I apologize. Did you say that we're currently not departing? That's currently not leaving the station. We're using a different piece of equipment for that shift commander. Is that what's going on right now?
Yeah, so the shift commander
Okay.
stays in the lead engine at all. This is
Okay.
when we have 5 members on duty. So
So
that's
since
the
this is
problem.
right, and since this is a 2012, I think Brian's point is, I fully expect that if we will see a request to replace that vehicle probably within the next 24 months, because that thing is pretty beat, unless it's used so infrequently. I think that's kind of the question. How do we avoid buying a new vehicle to replace that in, let's say, the next 3 years?
No, I don't think we need to be honest with you,
Okay.
Corey, because the vehicle that I'm in wouldn't be up until 2031. So we're fine. We wouldn't be beating on that vehicle or using that vehicle heavily day in and day out. It would probably be used maybe 3 or 4 times during the week. Okay. So or 3 or 4 days during the week.
Okay.
So it's not like we'd have to replace that vehicle in the next 2 to 3 or 4 years. We'd be looking way out. Okay.
Okay.
So
I certainly understand the need for a newer vehicle for the assistant fire chief, but yeah, the same thing,
Yeah.
which is like, I just worried we in 2 years, we're looking at this and it needs a bunch of work, and now we're buying another vehicle in 2 years because we've, assumed this one is going to last. But if you've got confidence that that won't be the case.
yeah, I mean, right now
makes a lot of sense.
with 70,000 miles and its predicted use, I don't think we'll be needing to replace it anytime soon. Again, we were looking at roll-offs on the police side of the house, and
just doesn't work.
due to situations that happened at the police side, they couldn't roll off a vehicle to us. And again, we'd have to put in another $11,000 into it just to let us use it properly. Okay, because they take out their radios, their light packages tied into their radio system, and so forth. So we just couldn't do it. It's not feasible. Not really feasible. Again, it's a piece of equipment that we have had in our hands for the last 12 years, and I think we could probably, seriously get another 5, 6, 8 years out of it.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so the bottom line is, this is not the replacement of an aging vehicle. This is the addition of a new vehicle for a new staffing plan. Is that fair?
Correct. It will answer or address the staffing model that we have with the collective bargaining agreement. with the union that we put into place 2 years ago.
Okay, so it's a new staffing model. So there's a new need based on the way you're now running your team.
Yes, yes.
Okay, we're just trying to get to the bottom of
Yep.
it. Because if it's a replacement, we get rid of the old. This isn't really a replacement. There's been an additional head added to the team down there, and you're running some ability to answer a second call now. And this
Yes.
fits into it.
With proper staffing. It's
Okay.
the staffing of trying to send 2 individuals to all incidents.
Right. Okay. So what shift or shifts would this vehicle be in play where you don't have, the chief or the assistant chief in the mix? So this would be, the primary vehicle to pull the shift chief, the shift leader. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a particular shift, Brian.
Yeah.
It would be particular days of shift manning. Okay. There are some days we're at 4. There are days we're at 5. There are days at 6. If there's 6 on, we wouldn't be using it. Days when there's 4 on, we wouldn't be using it. It's only when the days when there's 5 individuals on duty, we would be using it. Okay.
Because that's where you'd be rolling a second engine with one person in it.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So this is pretty limited use.
That's why I predict we'd get some years out of it. It wouldn't we don't have to worry about coming back to the town or to you guys and girls
Right.
for replacement of it in 2 to 4 years.
So mileage is low. Have you guys had any issues with it? How's the undercarriage and the body holding up?
Yeah, the body's good. We've had a few little rot spots, and we addressed them right away.
Okay.
And we just, as a matter of fact, like a year ago, we had to replace the gas tank. It had a leak in it. But other than that, because it's really just a really around town vehicle.
Yeah.
So the wear and tear is just probably stop and go around town.
We're gonna lose this one to salt, not miles.
Eventually, yeah, like everything
Okay.
else.
All right. I don't have any further questions. Other members of the committee?
Oh, one, Chief, this is somewhat unusual in that usually we see a bigger ask, and I'm happy that it's only one vehicle really that you're asking for. So are you sure that this is everything you're going to need?
This is for this fiscal 25, yes. Looking at the long-term capital plan for us, we're up for fire engine replacement in fiscal 26. And I don't want to tell you that number right now because I just want to secure the vehicle for this fiscal coming year.
I hear you.
Because I think we're going to have a much longer discussion replacing that in fiscal 26.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Brian, I'll make a motion that we recommend of course, I've just lost. There it is.
Michael, can I make a suggestion just before you make the motion? Or maybe you can make the motion, then I make the suggestion. But we typically, things that are actually getting funded out of capital, we don't typically vote them until we've heard all the requests. I don't see any reason why this wouldn't get funded, but I mean, if people feel strongly that they just want to vote this through, that's fine, but we've never really. This is straightforward. I'm fine with this.
It really is straightforward,
It
and
is.
I can't imagine
cutting
this out of something
it's
else.
it's a little different than we've done in the past, but
Yeah.
from just an executive decision-making perspective,
But
first responders are top of the list, and this is an obvious request, so let's just do it.
okay,
Go ahead,
so
make the motion, Mike.
okay, so I move that we recommend the purchase of a new command vehicle, and I'm not seeing the number. There it is, $64,500. I assume that's from the Capital Stabilization Fund for annual town meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Great. Any further discussion? All right, let's do a roll call vote. Susan Franklin,
Susan Franklin, aye.
Corey Evans,
Corey Evans, aye.
Mike Dick,
Mike Dick, aye.
Francine Lyons,
Francine Lyons, aye.
Brian Host, aye. Ralph Dormitzer? All right.
Well, thank you, I appreciate time.
Yep.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you, appreciate it, Brian.
All right, which brings us to police.
Okay, we have several people that are gonna come in for this. And I'm gonna have to drop off, so if someone would like to take over the meeting, okay, thanks, Corey.
Which attachment are we opening for the police?
Let me see.
cbc.fy25.packet.draft.
Yes.
Thank you. Got it.
.1234.exe.
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
Hey,
If
Chief.
you could bring in Josh Kimball as well and Rich Kinship. Okay, cool.
So there's, I'm sorry, Chief. So we have Harrison is still
Well, I
here.
think people are just watching, but I
Bill?
think we wanted Rich and Josh.
You got him.
Those are our fleet people.
Okay.
Hey, capital budget, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We can.
Hi, so do you have the packet in front of you?
We do.
Okay, cool. So the total request and for this year is 172,628. And I guess we could take it right from the top with vehicle replacement. Is I think we're in at 53,000. It started out as 73, but I'm been told by Michelle that and Chris Senior that there's a $20,000 earmark from the state for this natural resource vehicle, and this is a replacement vehicle. The original vehicle was purchased in 2018, and it's near end of life. And just by way of background, we've had a very interesting year with vehicles. We've lost 3 vehicles out of our fleet that were totaled in crashes or acts of nature. A tree fell on one. We had a deer take one out, and we had an accident as well. So we're sort of actually, and I say that these are the oldest vehicles in the fleet, so it sort of worked out for us, and thankfully no one was injured. But we were able to replace 3 of our vehicles. In the middle of all this, the engine on on our pickup truck, our K9 pickup truck, seized. So that is out of service. So we had to take the normal pickup truck that we use for events, special events, and move that over to K9. Lots of moving parts this year, but the bottom line is we're looking to replace the truck for natural resources.
Bill, quick question on the animal control. That is a new Ford, isn't it? That the front line for the animal control?
2018.
It's a 2018.
Yep.
Okay, so we're just off. Did it blow while it was still on warranty? I mean, I know
that is not the one that went out of service. It was the K9 truck. That's a 2016. That 2015. Actually, Josh, is K9 the old K9 Chevy? It was actually so old it's a Chevy.
it was the Chevy. Okay,
yeah.
so it's not the newer. It's not the newer K9 unit.
No,
Okay.
no.
I knew we'd bought a newer K9 unit that I think is a Ford. Is it not?
It is. That's actually not a K9 unit. It's for special events. We bought
Okay.
it in 2019, I believe, or 2020.
Okay.
So we're looking to replace the animal control / natural resource vehicle. It's out of warranty now, 5 years, and it's time to replace that one.
Question for you, Chief. Since this is still somewhat shared position with, is it Norwell now?
We still share with Norwell.
Okay. So is the full capital cost of the truck out of our budget, or is there going to be some sort of shared cost that kick back to us?
So the vehicle is part of our responsibility, and it,
Okay.
and that was part of the that's part of the earmark from the state, because we do help out with Wampatuck State Park, and it's a regional it's a regional program. So that's why we're able to get $20,000 from the state. It started out as, you know, a whole truck, and due to the budget crunch
Got it.
statewide, it's down to 20,000 and sinking. So we're trying to move quickly.
Yeah, because the first time they like almost bought the whole thing for
They
us,
bought
right, with that.
the whole truck. Yeah, it was on an
Okay.
earmark.
Gotcha.
On
And
the-
mileage on that's really high. It looks like we're driving that thing. I mean, obviously, if we're going back and forth to Norwell, we're spending a lot of time in that. Is that higher mileage than the other vehicles? I mean, per year?
Josh, how many miles on that?
Yeah, so that's the highest mileage that I've seen on a truck in a long time. It's 84,000 on that truck currently.
Okay, gotcha.
On the insurance reimbursement for the 3 damaged vehicles, do we receive anything?
We did. We actually were insured for replacement. So we have money for 3 new vehicles. There has to be, we've got 2, but we're having trouble sourcing them. You know, Ford had shut down for a while. So we're in the process. We have 1 on order. We just took delivery of 1 that we ordered in July. So we're really almost a half year behind. So we're sort of we are out of sync due to supply chain issues and computer chips and everything else that's been going on in the world. So usually this is a 3 vehicle year. You know, some years are two vehicles. This would have been a 3 vehicle year, and now it's actually down to you know, we've replaced. We have a newer fleet now, so we're in pretty good shape for the next several years.
I'm just wondering if we're able to use some of that insurance coverage towards these vehicles, since we're replacing damaged vehicles, right?
We did. We replaced vehicles. We
Okay, so
replaced old
these
vehicles.
Okay, so these have nothing to do with the vehicles that were damaged.
Correct.
I see. Okay, thank you.
So I'm just trying to follow this. I'm looking at the request. This is a 2019 vehicle?
A 2018. I believe
Okay.
it's 2018.
I'm looking at something wrong. I mean, I'm looking at a request. Police vehicle replacement program. Yeah, I'm looking at the request, and it says replace cruiser out of cycle due to a crash where cruiser was crushed by a falling tree. This allowed the replacement transfer of a 2019 pickup truck to CFD.
Yeah, so things changed because we lost the K9 truck. Again, this,
Okay.
if you look at the date this was prepared, it was back in early December. Since then, we've lost 2 vehicles.
Okay,
One-
so the request just doesn't reflect what's actually happening. So did you actually transfer anything to fire?
No, that was the intent.
Okay.
But it just didn't work out. That's what, you know, John was talking about, Chief Doctor was talking about.
Got it.
We seized an engine, so that everything went to hell.
Okay, got it. So this 2019 is still in your fleet, and this request is just for the animal control. So help me out. So this is a 2018, you said?
It's either 20, we purchased it in 2018. It might be a model year 2019. Josh?
Or either way.
Yeah, that's a model year 2019.
So what we did with this 19, like I said, it's been well taken care of because there's only 1 driver.
Yep.
Transferred that to K9, you know, with the K9 officer. That's gone to K9 because his vehicle the engine is seized. So now, you know, Einstein and Officer Reardon have that 2019, and Josh is using our spare pickup truck as an interim fix. So this new vehicle will put our spare pickup truck back in so we can use it for events and traffic barricades and all that stuff.
Okay.
We're at the same number of vehicles as the bottom line. We're just
No,
shuffling.
I know we've got lots of moving parts here. So so the bottom line is this animal control vehicle that I see in the picture in this packet is no longer your vehicle. It's now the K9 unit. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Got it. And you're driving around in a spare pickup.
Correct. The one that we use for special events and barricades and things like that.
Okay. And what year is that?
That is a 2020 or 2019.
That's a 2019 also.
2019. Okay.
And how many miles does that have on it?
That has either 18 or 20,000.
Okay, and is the issue that it's just not equipped properly, I assume?
Well, there's that, and beyond that, we need a pickup truck for special events. Road barricades, when the lights go out, we gotta put out barricades and stop signs. We don't have a means to do that without a truck. Drag the trailers around.
Right. I guess what I'm wrestling with is when we first started buying the pickups, we were going to use it not just, for special events. We were going to use it, as a frontline vehicle in some way, shape, or form. And it seems to now be relegated to just special events.
Oh no, we use it as it's a spare as well. I mean, we
Okay.
have vehicles out of service every day, so
Okay.
it's used in patrol.
Okay, so it is used as a
Oh, yeah.
as a frontline cruiser.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
But it is a spare.
Okay. It just a comment aside, I'm not sure it changes the vector of this discussion, but it seems to be accruing miles at an extraordinarily low rate. And I know the goal is to sort of hit that 100,000 mile number right around year 5, so that we're maxing the warranties and spreading the love amongst our vehicle, or abuse amongst our vehicles. So if we can find a way to to sort of exploit this vehicle, or keep it on a much different timeline than the vehicles that we are exploiting, that's another alternative. But I'm just thinking forward, when this is 25, 26, and this is a 6 or 7 year old vehicle with 25,000 miles on it, it's going to be kind of hard to make the case to replace.
Well, it's currently being used by Natural Resources, so that's the.
Yeah. So it's going to get some miles there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And to get a replacement pickup truck, we're probably a year out.
Yeah.
That's how backed up things are.
Okay, I don't have any further questions to others.
Cool. I can move on to the next, which is electronic parking and RTF enforcement. I'm sort of doing this on behalf of 3 different departments: DPW, town manager's office, and the police department. We're looking to change the vendor we use for parking enforcement. We identified a new vendor at the MMA conference last year, and we'll be going back and forth with them, and they have a pretty solid solution for electronic parking enforcement. We do that now, but the vendor has been basically not responsive to our requests and our needs. We want to migrate over to this new system. It's much more intuitive. It uses a smartphone and a printer, or we can use the MDTs, the mobile data terminals, in the cruisers in a printer to print parking tickets. I included a lot of the stats and numbers, the enforcement numbers, in my proposal. You can take a peek at those, but we issue about $75,000 in fines nowadays, and it just makes things a lot easier, and it takes away the back end of processing the tickets. The added bonus to this system is we can put license plate readers at RTF, and that'll solve a problem there. What they do now for enforcement at RTF for people without stickers or permits is they put an employee out there with the clipboard to write down the scofflaw's license plate number. They may or may not get the plate number right, and then they ask us to run it, and they send a letter and eventually a citation. This will automate that process, and the ask on that is $71,093. And there's a breakdown in your packet. I can go into it if you want, but I'll entertain any questions you have. Mike, I think you're on mute.
Thanks. How long do you think it would take us to recoup our outlay for this system? Your document says 50,000 a year. You mentioned 75.
We write 75. What town hall does with dismissals or appeals, that's a different story.
Oh,
What they
okay.
collect is different.
Does it, any labor saving in town hall in terms of processing?
Well, there's no, I mean, if you look at the, under Department of Technology, if you look at the flow chart, under form a ticket workflow, that's the workflow there. You know, there's actually manual books printed, violations are issued, 2 copies go in the lockbox at headquarters. Someone separates the copies and enters them. 1 copy gets hand delivered to town hall, then that one at town hall gets mailed out to the processor in New York. So whereas with this new system, it's you dock the unit. Actually, you don't even dock it, it's cellular. That's part of the cost. It transmits the information for the registration right to the vendor, and it's processed immediately.
Right. Thanks.
It's also, you know, you can take a picture of the violation as well. It prints right on the ticket, the actual
Right.
violation, the vehicle.
Looking at the monthly charges, I see a monthly maintenance charge of over $2,000 per month.
Yeah,
What does that give us?
it's the cell service
Oh.
for each unit, as well as, you know, the processing charges for the process. They take a cut of the tickets. The process, I'm not sure the back end, that's a real town hall thing. But they do have a line item to cover this. We do pay a charge now. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Again, I'm presenting on behalf of Michelle and Tracy and Chris. And they handle the back end of the tickets. We just issue them.
Right. And then how many years do you think we'll get out of the hardware and software for that matter?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but these are lease. These are it's an app based. We're leasing the app, so we'll have a couple of handheld units, but the cruisers will have an app. They'll run a proprietary app in the cruiser on the mobile data terminal and be able to print the tickets from a printer that's attached to the headrest of the passenger seat.
Okay, so under hardware and extended warranty, really, the hardware is just ticket printers and license plate readers, but it's the software suite I imagine we're spending the big bucks on.
Yeah, it's the app itself. I mean, it's all
Right.
broken down in this
Yeah.
color-coded.
And who handles the software upgrades? Do you have someone on your team that is your IT person, or is that going through Ron Menard, or?
It goes through Ron Menard, but usually these vendors, they're sort of self-sufficient. They handle everything from soup to nuts. We run all kinds of different software programs. And
So they're sending you software updates, like an overnight update that
It's
as
pushed
long as
out.
the machine is on, it'll run.
yeah, it's pushed right out. Or if we want to, you know, if the board change the fines, say, they just
Yeah.
we advise them and they push it right back to us. Or if we add an officer or someone leaves, they can, you know, they'll add an ID number or a login. It's all cloud-based. There's really no
Mhm.
hardware per se, except for the actual ticket writers, which are, you know, more or less like a small iPad.
Right. Yearly license charges, that's all licenses for the town, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. And what, I imagine what, half a dozen installations, or how many?
It was here. I think it's 8 or 9.
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
Okay. I think that the huge benefit of this is going to be the RTF, where you know I don't even think we understand the extent of the problem there.
I was
Well,
actually just,
What's that?
sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I also imagine that we could use it down at Parker Avenue ramp.
Well, that's one of the things we want. I mean, I don't want to take on too much right now, but part of the master plan is one of the cruises will have a license plate reader attached to it, and when the vehicle drives through, actually it'll be the natural resource officer. When he drives through, it'll capture the plates and tell you who's been there or who doesn't have a permit. Though, you know, the permits are all entered into on a white list, and if that plate is not associated with the current permit, it'll flag. And we could do the same at Sandy Beach, same at Government Island.
Right.
It's going to really cut down on you know, an officer getting out of the car and walking roll.
Right. I'd be interested to hear, like, 6 months, a year later, what kind of a lift we got from this.
Yeah.
What kind of additional well, as you mentioned, we're not in the business of making profit, but let's face it, it is a source of revenue for the town. So I'd be curious to see if we do get a lift.
It can be substantial. I mean, as you know, we've upped the ticket price, substantially. That hadn't
Yeah.
been changed in 35 years. So
Right.
it's $100 now for Parker Ave and Government Island and Sandy Beach, and $50 other places. So
Right.
it's quite a jump. I mean, it's actually caused compliance, which was the goal, but
Right.
it's also we're hovering around $75,000 in tickets being issued. What we
Right.
collect is a different story.
All right, good. Thank you.
I'm gonna go, I guess, against the grain here a little bit. I just, to me, I'm looking at the total amount in the yearly. It's a lot of money. I mean, that's like half a cruiser extra a year in operations, and you guys do a really good job the way it is. So I'm kind of looking at this going like, if we, so it's not immediately apparent to me that it's like the situation out of control. I think you guys done a great job with Sandy Beach and all those other things, and especially with town. Like, I think town is a big problem. So when it comes to the problem, I feel like what the existing policies you guys have been doing have been really effective. I'm also a little bit protective of the RTF. I feel like it's a little hollowed ground, and I mean, but I was a select board member. A lot of angry phone calls from people that say, well, I've got 3 stickers and my car's at the shop and now this, and I don't want to, I never want to make the citizens of town feel like you guys or the town is out to get anybody. Right. And so I'm a little bit worried that this system, when people just drive by, all of a sudden they get a citation and people react very emotionally to that. And I don't, I'm not sure if I'm looking at the cost and then the impact, if, there's not something else I think we could find to spend the money on. Just myself. I think the mobile one, if you feel like for operational efficiency, it's really worth, I mean, it's a lot of money. $30,000 a year is a lot of money just on the maintenance. Or if it's 15 just for one and see how it goes. I think that would make it more comfortable, but I do worry that this is a lot of money in some places with maybe some unintended consequences.
No, you make a good point, but I mean, the bottom line is we're definitely going to have to change vendors. There's no question about that, because they're just non-responsive, and the machines that we write the tickets with are broken more than they're working.
Okay, that's not worth it then. Okay.
Yeah, there's not many people out there. These folks are on the state bid, and they've been very successful with other towns. And I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because I'm speaking for the DPW. And my experience with them is, they send a warning letter. I think the first and second time is a warning letter, so they don't start finding you until like up around the 3rd time. Maybe someone can correct me on that, but I think that's what their policy is. And that would be handled by them, not us.
Yeah, we also don't. I mean, those guys don't want to enforce this, right? I mean, those guys got a lot going on. So I just maybe punt it back a little bit to see if there's something that the town manager staff can come up with that maybe is, isn't putting on the DPW guys, but also isn't kind of scanning everyone's license plates and making people feel like they're, I don't want to say under attack, but I can see that emotion coming towards us a little bit when it comes to the DPW. So especially because the amount of emotional response that we got with just the changing of the boutique rules. Right. So as I said, the DPW is hollowed ground. So I just want to be sure.
No, I can tell you from experience, someone about 20 years ago, someone thought it was a good idea to post a police officer there to check permits, and it ended up in a fist fight with the resident, and the officer got punched in the face.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe this thing will get smashed on the way out or something, but I'm just, I'd prefer to slow down on that part of it. If I know we're not a policy board, but that's kind of on the capital side, maybe the potential gain isn't quite as strong.
Well, the bottom, we have to do something because we have to change vendors, and nothing's budgeted for. So we're going to be back to 100% books, and we're going to have them printed. But again, that's a policy decision.
So do the annual charges? as listed, are they, if we just did the one, would be they less, or is this kind of like a site? It costs us the same monthly annual charges regardless of how many units we have.
There is an upcharge for each additional unit, but it doesn't mean,
Okay.
it's really, it wouldn't be, how, do you just install it in one cruiser? And does that cruiser run all of it, during the summer, the cruiser would never get away from the shore.
Right.
And, we dedicate someone just to parking in the village because it's been.
In town, right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's really, it's very difficult to say we're only gonna buy one machine, or it's only gonna be, used in one car. It's almost like everybody has to have the same thing. And again, this is budget. There is a line item in the town manager's budget for a lot of this stuff. And, I don't know if there's opportunity for an enterprise fund where, that this money goes back into an enterprise fund to fund the program, but it 100% is more efficient, and an officer isn't tied up as long. We're trying to make the most of the officer's time.
Thanks.
And Michelle and Tracy can really elaborate on the back end of things. I'm just operationally in issuing the tickets. It's this is the trend that everybody's going. This is the way every department's going, because it just saves time and man hours. The back end is more of them and the money. We don't get involved in that. Unless you want to cut me in on it, that'd be interesting.
It's been more creative ways to make money.
Okay.
Thanks for the time.
Okay.
So I'm not wrestling with the need here so much as or the understanding that you need to replace the system that we invested in. I don't know what it was, about a half decade ago.
Yes.
And I do understand that there's an annual cost associated with that, in the operating budget, which I'm trying to just sort of apply sort of the same methodology here that we apply to, major software loads or IT infrastructure, which is, we pay for capital and install. We don't typically pick up, annual license and maintenance costs, which are really ongoing recurring operating budget items. I'm just looking at the cost breakdown here. I can't really reconcile just, glancing at this, that the monthlies and the annuals come out to 28,660. I assume that number's right. I just can't look at the breakdown and sort of get there. There's nothing really on here that.
Yeah, I assure you, the math does work. How it's explained might be, again, I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage here because I'm speaking on behalf of the back end of this, and I'm the front end user.
I guess the core of the question is, like with IT infrastructure, we do, we buy the equipment, we pay for the licenses, we pay for the install, we pay for 1 year of maintenance, and license fees, and then it's, that's Ron's operating budget from that point on. Is that what you're envisioning here? Or are we going to be seeing a request for 28 grand each year from here forward, given that that's actually maintenance for the system?
The way it's written, and again, I'm speaking about the back end of this. There is a line item in the town manager's budget.
Right.
For this, we do pay, there is a monthly charge right now.
Right.
And it is budgeted for, but this was, the quote we got for the first year. So Michelle may be able to address that a little bit better. Again, I'm not 100% comfortable speaking on the back end of this. I can talk all day about the front end, but.
I understood. So I just want to make sure you don't get caught by surprise, Chief, when this is sort of operating budget. I assume Chris has got it covered. I know there's a line item now for operating budget on this stuff. I doubt it's 28,000. So I just want to, make sure people are conscientious of that before this gets layered in. But we typically pick up, the cost of the purchase, and everything associated with getting the thing launched. So call it everything associated with the first year is typically what we do, and then after that, the maintenance is the maintenance.
And that's how it was quoted to town hall. I just broke it out.
Yep.
Just for information.
Okay. Do we have any other questions on the ticketing system?
Yeah, let me throw in a couple of thoughts, if I may. I guess I would like to know exactly what are we actually paying for the current system. I'd like to also know what options we might have other than the systems being proposed. And more or less where Corey is, I do think people will be extremely upset, particularly those who forget in March they're supposed to update their all facilities sticker and find out that all of a sudden they're now getting ticketed, and a lot of them are. And it'll be very hard to reconcile all of that. So I'm not a big fan of camera use to establish enforcement. I understand the RTF is a problem as I go there myself and I see it. But I do think that it's not a really good idea to establish cameras to photograph plates and to send tickets. I think everywhere it's been tried, I think a lot of people have found that to be very unattractive at the very least. But anyway, I'd like to see options and other ways to handle this question.
You're gonna have to take that up with Brian, because again, that's not, the RTF is not my responsibility. And we don't issue those tickets, so that's a question for Brian.
Do we have a some type of a light display up at the RTF that you see when you pull in? I mean,
What?
any type of a display that would allow you to give people a heads up, like, hey, it's March, do you have your new sticker? Because otherwise you're about to get a ticket.
I don't know what their policy is. I really don't.
Yeah.
Again, that's not,
No,
it's not a
They
police.
usually put that sign out, Brian.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
mobile sign out.
to Ralph's point, I think people will be upset if it's a surprise. To the extent they drive right by a sign that says, you know, look at your sticker before proceeding, I think that would be helpful.
I mean, I can't solve the RTF's problems. You can, sort of
Understood.
drop off your X-ray machine as far as I'm concerned. It's not
I get it, Bill, but they're not going to call Brian Joyce and yell at him. They're going to call your guy.
Oh no, I report right back.
When they get the ticket, they're going to call you.
No, it's a town ticket. It's not a parking. It's a town bylaw ticket from DPW.
Okay.
Oh, I'll call someone.
Make sure Brian's number's on it. That's all.
Oh. I try to keep it to 6 people hate me at one time.
Other questions, thoughts? Okay, let's move on to the UTV.
Next is UTV and trailer, 28.3, and this is to, I'm sure you read in the packet. The one that we have was a gift. It was gifted to us probably 8 or 9 years ago. It's very low to the ground, and we can't get down the railroad bed with it. We can get so far down, but it's not tall enough to straddle the tracks. We looked into a lift kit for it. It's not feasible. We've tried to use it during a rescue in the snow, 18 inches of snow on the spur trail across from the T station, and we blew the drivetrain on it, trying to get a person who was probably about 3/4 of a mile in the woods with a broken leg out of there. And we end up having to basically hoof it in there and call the DPW and commandeer a front end loader to scrape that trail so we could get in and out. But we talk about needs and wants. This is definitely a need at this point. Those trails have become really popular. People hurt in there several times a year. Probably at least a half dozen where we actually have to go in and get them deep into Wampatuck on one of those spur trails. And again, as you know, we've had 2 suicides on the MBTA tracks in the last year, as well as an attempted suicide. So we are down on those tracks, dealing with the aftermath. In a lot of times it's pretty far down the tracks, and we can't get into where we need to get into with that UTV to transport people and the remains out. So that's where we're at.
What are we going to do with the old one?
We're going to keep the old one, and we're using it for the summer for the parking enforcement people. So they've been using it to. Last year we used it pretty effectively with parking in the village and at the beaches instead of using tying up a cruiser. We put a civilian traffic officer in it, and he uses it as like a meter maid.
Is there a reason we wouldn't use the new one for that?
The new one is going to be sort of specialized, where it'll be high off the ground. It's going to be a little bit higher. It might not as, probably wouldn't run as well on a road. And again, the other one was gifted to us.
Yeah, it's a sensitive topic. I mean, when that was gifted to us, I think people understood that was the gift that was just going to keep on giving. It would be, dropped into the fleet, and then it would ultimately result in a capital request, right?
Yep, here we are.
And here we are, and we've gone from 0 to 1 with a gift, and now we're going from 1 to 2. So we're, very sensitive to fleet growth.
We didn't have the trails. The trails weren't as popular 10 years ago or 8 years ago. For some reason, probably Corey could speak to this, but there's a lot of people out there, and they use them more than ever. I don't know if they beefed them up.
It's drastically busy out there than it
Yeah.
was like 8 years ago, like drastically. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're actually having a, we have real difficult time locating people. They can't, they go in there and they can't tell us where they're at. So
Right.
it turns into a 2-hour ordeal of, you can't get a cruiser in there really, without really scratching the hell out of it. So it's an effective way to get in there.
Does the state give us any money like they do for the
No.
environmental truck for this thing?
No, as a matter of fact, that's one of the avenues I tried. And I said, a lot of this is we're using it on, the railroad bed.
Yeah.
Really state property. And they said,
Correct.
well, there's no money this year and we really can't help you out. But, here's 20 grand for an NRO truck. We're helping you with that. It's like, all right. But yeah, that was the first thing I looked for. And then even with the environmental police, we've tried calling them. And when we had that person with the broken leg, probably about 3/4 of a mile in on the spur trail, try to get a couple snowmobiles, and they said they'd send one, but it was I forget, it was like out near Worcester, and that just in a snowstorm, and just they were it's not feasible.
He's coming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's too bad. You would think that since so many calls are Wampatuck State Park, that's really the whole reason for this, in addition to the beach. But you would think we would get some accommodation there.
On using the vehicle on the railroad bed, what comes to mind is the MBTA providing some kind of means for local towns to access their rail bed. I don't understand why local police enforcement are expected to get onto MBTA tracks. Not every town is going to be able to afford a vehicle that can run on the tracks. I'm just sort of wondering aloud. I don't expect an answer, Chief, but I'd certainly love to pose that to our delegation, to our state senator, state rep, and say, shouldn't the MBTA, contribute if we're trying to deal with suicides on their tracks?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, the devil's been in the details. And, when we went down this path with the T back in 2004, 2005, there was a mitigation process, and a lot of that, and they did, the T did give us a, few $1 million, but it didn't go to, we just, there wasn't forward thinking back then of, these problems. And we've, truth be told, we've been lucky for 20 years, but we haven't been so lucky this year.
Right. If we didn't have this vehicle that can run on the tracks, what would you do? Would you just continue to use the existing UTV and roll along, the road bed as best you could on the side, or?
Yeah, I mean, what it is we're really trying to, to be quite blunt, carry a body out. And sometimes they're pretty far down, or parts of a body. And it's, not only is it, this UTV has a Stokes basket attached to it, the new one. So we can actually, put a couple people in it and bring bring someone injured or remains out of, a deep spot in the woods or down the tracks. The alternative is to, bring in extra people and have them walk down, and carry out either a Stokes basket with remains from a long distance. And there's really, having been on those tracks, a bunch of times, there's no real footing there. That's all like riprap, that rock.
Yeah.
It's very loose, and someone's going to get injured. You really are. And just the unit we have, it's just not tall enough to straddle those tracks.
Thanks.
It's, the fire department uses it as well. It's, we share this resource, and it's again, it's a frontline vehicle. It's plugged in, it's charging, and when we get a call in, Doan Street or Spur Trail or on the tracks, or even in Wheelwright or Whitney Woods, that someone comes in and drops off the cruiser and takes that unit into the woods. 2 officers will go in. So it's a first response. It's a frontline vehicle for those situations.
So Chief, there seems to be a lot of different varieties of these units. The one that you selected, what was your process for picking that particular one?
I'll defer to Josh on this, because I am by no means an expert in these things. Josh, you still there?
I am, yes. So our current.
This is the person who operates it mostly, the natural resource person.
So our current UTV that we have right now has seating for 6. It's basically like driving a school bus down some of these tight trails. I find myself doing 15 to 20 point turns to turn around in a trail and get someone out. We needed something that's a little bit smaller, more compact. I have personal experience in using a 3-seater, basically the one bench seat UTV with the Stokes basket in the back. It's highly effective. It's very maneuverable. And it's night and day between what we currently use right now. If I have to make a 20-point turn, that's happened multiple times in Wampatuck. It's time consuming. It could take me 10 to 15 minutes just to turn around to get that person out of the woods and to the awaiting ambulance. Whereas if we have this smaller, more compact unit, I can do that in 3. So that was the real big contributing factor into getting the smaller unit into the one that we chose. It's got multiple drive modes also. The UTV that we have right now they're technically all-terrain tires. They're made for the woods and the street. However, they are more street tires, as the chief pointed out when we tried to go through the snow last year and ended up blowing the drivetrain out of it. Those tires aren't very effective in all-terrain. This specific vehicle that we would have does have legitimate all-terrain tires that were spec'd out by me and by a representative at Polaris to handle any terrain that we would be going on out in Wampatuck, in Whitney Woods, and all the other wooded areas in town, as well as the beach. And it would be sufficient enough for us to drive from the station to those locations on the roadway.
So it's a Polaris single bench. Is that long and short of it?
Yes.
Okay. With a much shorter wheelbase and much higher clearance.
Yes.
And a back that holds a Stokes basket.
So sorry, what is a Stokes basket for those of us that don't know?
Like a backboard, a stretcher.
Okay. Okay. And that's just an attachment to the bed, or is that actually the way that the bed is made?
Yep. So it's a skid that goes in the bed. It allows actually for another person to be seated in the back.
Okay.
So essentially, the Stokes basket slides in, it clicks, and it allows the paramedic to sit there and attend to the patient while we drive out.
Okay. Okay. So total vehicle capacity is 5. It's 3 in the bench, 2 in the back.
Correct.
1 in the basket, 1 attending. Okay. And so the concept is that vehicle would not be used for ticketing during summers? Is that,
No,
okay.
that would be strictly
it
rescue.
really becomes your deep snow and off-roads vehicle?
Correct.
Okay.
And next is the Taser lease program back from last
Actually,
year.
just, Bill, before we go on, does anyone else on the committee have any other questions about this?
I'm just curious as to whether we can apply for any kind of grants, given that this is such a specialized use for wilderness areas and railway beds. It just seems that it's such a specialized use that there may be funding coming from the state, if not the federal government, to help towns. This is something that most towns don't have to deal with.
Yeah, I have had an eye out for grants, that's for sure. And it seems that the only way to address this is with an earmark. And basically what they do is, they bury an amount in the state budget somewhere. And with the animal control natural resource truck the last time, it was like, you should have seen, it was buried within the bowels of the state budget. Like, it was a foot.
Yeah, no, that's what our delegation is paid to do.
Yeah, I mean,
That's what
it
they're there
was-
for.
but there was nothing this time. They're just saying, that they're in such a money crunch that, there's just
Right. And is this coming from our delegation or is it coming from some state agency?
no, this from the
This-
delegation. Yeah, we've been in
Okay.
contact with Pat O'Connor's office.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, but Bill, the bottom line is we've looked to see if there are grants. And
Oh,
there's
yeah.
nothing- Okay,
Yeah, we've tried Homeland Security, we've tried everything. Even port security, and there's nothing.
Park Service?
I'm sorry?
Park Service?
No, port security.
No. Have we tried Park Service?
I mean, if you can find something, I'll do it, but
I haven't
there's-
looked.
I get all the emails and I
Yeah.
haven't seen anything
Okay,
that's even remotely close.
okay. Move on to the tasers.
Tasers, this is a year over year, year 2 of the lease.
All right.
I think you knew this was coming last year.
Yep.
Part of I believe, a 5-year plan.
This is just year 2 of 5. No changes.
Correct.
Okay.
Uh,
Anyone have any questions on it?
Yeah,
okay.
5 years. That's all I got for you.
Okay. Do people have any follow-up requests regarding any of these items, or do people want to vote these tonight? I feel like some of the are clearly highest priority. Others could possibly spark debate, but
Yeah, I think that we have to ask the chief our usual question, which is, if we capital budget have to get the most out of whatever our free cash allocation is, can you prioritize any of these spends for us? And I'm not asking you to do that here, but could you send in the way you would prioritize these 4 requests?
Sure,
I
if you can
can-
do it here, that's helpful. The mic's being delayed.
Well, I mean, they're all important, or I wouldn't put them forward. That's the standard answer. Again, I'm always cognizant of needs and wants, and I try not to bring you wants. I bring you needs, and these are needs.
So, Bill, if we had to order these, what would the order be?
Vehicles are always first. The UTV is next.
Ahead of those are both ahead of the tasers.
Well, the tasers we own. We're under contract.
Right. So I would put the taser as 1 because I don't think we have a choice. But I'm just curious how you look at it.
Vehicles
Got
are
my
just as
taser.
effective.
Yeah, so I guess tasers, vehicles, UTV, and parking.
Okay.
I think we should just get some more information. I mean, thank you, Chief, for all the operational stuff, but just from all the relevant departments regarding the parking things, so we had some questions. Why not get them answered? But I think
Oh,
the
no.
vehicles are pretty straightforward.
No, fair
and
play.
UTV.
So
I
do
can't-
people want to deal with the tasers in the vehicle, the NRO truck tonight?
Mike, you're muted, but it looks like you're saying no.
Yeah, I'm saying no. I think we need to hear all the other requests and just see what we're up against.
Okay.
Now, that's just me. How about the rest of us?
No, this is the slippery slope we're on, having voted fire. I'm just,
If yeah, that's I kind of feel like we should give.
I'm trying to love all my
CPD
departments equally.
Yeah, I mean, CBD is down a truck and we're down a UTV. So I feel like just to get the level, we're pretty clear on those two things. And the tasers sounds like we can't do anything about it anyway. So, I mean, yeah, I'll make the motion, and if it dies, it dies. I mean, you know, because since we gave it to fire, I feel like just to be equitable, we should do the same with CPD.
My only concern splitting up the request is not to not forget, and I guess maybe that's up to Chief to make sure we don't forget this fourth request if we're voting on 3 and not all 4.
I won't let you forget.
I'm just pulling up my my document.
Then I agree. If we can knock some off, that'd be great. But
I
just
think
so
the taser's easy. The question is, before someone makes a motion, how far down this list do people want to go? So that the motion can be sized accordingly.
I
I'll make the go ahead.
oh, go ahead. I was going to agree with Corey on the 3. but-
Okay. So I make a motion that the capital budget committee recommend the following line items from the CPD budget request: vehicle replacement program for the NRO truck for $73,000, and 4x4 rescue UTV for $28,300, and funding for the taser lease program at $20,235.
Do you have a second?
A second.
Do we have any further discussion?
Yes, I'm not comfortable voting for all 3 as a group. I feel that the NRO truck requires some more comparison with the other department requests, given its price tag.
Sorry, one thing, can you hear me? Corey, that should be 53,000 because we have that $20,000 earmark for the NRO truck.
Thank you very much with the adjustment for the
Yeah.
$20,000 earmark. Yep.
Yeah.
I meant to say that at the end, Chief. My apologies. Yep.
Okay, sorry.
Mike, you good?
I'm still not, I certainly can vote for the taser. The UTV is 28.3. That's not a big number. I do feel like we are being backed into yet another vehicle on the fleet.
But
I also feel
Mike, I
that
think
there-
this replaces one. This is just to get one that's dead back on the road. So we're not adding anything to the fleet.
the UTV is another.
No, the NRO truck, the one that you're talking about. This is, and what I appreciate what the chief did
Right,
was
but
by
if-
making this the NRO truck. Go ahead.
If the NRO truck can last another year, we haven't gone through that yet.
Well, so no, the NRO truck currently is now went to K9, which ceased. So we're kind of backfilling here, and I think this is a creative way to ensure
Right,
that we
but-
get the most state funding.
And maybe the K9 truck can be purchased for a lot less than an NRO truck. So we haven't debated this, we haven't discussed this, and we're about to vote on it.
Would
So I
you
would
rather,
propose-
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Francine.
I was just gonna say, would you rather we break up the 3s because you'd vote differently?
Mhm.
So let me make a suggestion before we break it up. Michael, what are your open questions on the NRO? Because I think you're hitting on points that can be answered tonight. Whether we voted or not doesn't matter, but we've got
Right.
Chief Quigley and Officer Kimball here, and we should. And there seems to be some confusion regarding the NRO truck.
Sure. Can the NRO truck, can the expense for an NRO truck be reduced by deferring its purchase and going to the problem, which is the animal control pickup truck? Can we find an animal control pickup truck which sounds much less specialized? I don't know. We haven't discussed in detail the comparison, but I'm just looking for a way to reduce this overall spend. And then also on the rescue UTV, I would certainly want to hear from our delegation and say, we have a specific need for something that is normally not part of a town's expenses, something specialized for this particular town with our particular terrain. And the fact that we have the MBTA tracks that are adding to the town's liability and responsibility, not liability, but responsibility for, taking care of state operations, which is the MBTA operations. We're being called on to provide
Right. And
life
the state park.
safety and public safety support for a state agency,
Okay.
and
so
we
let's-
should be covered for that.
Okay, so let's break this down into two pieces. Let's hit the vehicle first and see if we can put that one to bed.
Sure.
Chief Quigley, Officer Kimball, is there a difference in scope and cost for an animal control truck versus an NRO truck?
That's one and the same. The animal control truck is the NRO truck.
Well, right now it is because the animal control truck died and you moved the NRO truck over to the ACO officer.
No, so the canine, police canine.
Sorry. I
ferocious dog.
misspoke.
Yeah,
It's a
It's
shitty
getting
game we're
late.
playing here.
Guys, it's getting late.
yeah.
And too many
canine-
acronyms getting thrown around.
Yeah, canine is Einstein, the German Shepherd.
Yeah.
Police dog, like tracks, bites, the whole works.
So it's the canine truck that died.
Yep,
And so you moved the ACO truck over to the canine unit.
correct. We scraped off animal control. We wrote
Okay.
canine on it.
Okay.
Because it had all the cages and everything in it.
Okay. Is it your intent to keep that vehicle with the canine unit?
Correct.
Okay. And so instead of replacing the canine unit, we're now going to replace
The NRO truck.
the NRO animal control officer truck.
Correct.
Okay. Is the vehicle in any material way different in scope or cost?
Same exact vehicle, because it has a cage in the back and it's a pickup truck.
Okay. So it doesn't matter which one we replace, whether
No.
it's the
Ford
canine unit
F-150,
or the NRO truck, it's going to be the same truck, same cost.
same exact truck.
Okay, except for we get a $20,000 uplift on this one for some
Get
reason.
that
Exactly.
earmark, and I'm not sure,
Correct.
I'm not sure how that earmark works. If we don't use it in this
Okay.
budget, or I don't, it's not like they send us a check. They
Right.
want the bill for the truck.
Have they ever sent us a check for a canine unit before?
No. The
Okay.
canine unit, operationally, the canine unit, the dog vet, the vet bills and all that, that's all handled by a private foundation, Cohasset Working Dog. But they don't cover the truck. The truck
Yeah.
is,
No, we've definitely covered the truck. Okay, so the fact that they got the NRO truck, and we're replacing the NRO truck is actually a more cost-effective way to do it because we're picking up a $20,000 grant.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Michael, circling back to you, I don't know if that answered your question.
It does. Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay.
I'm clear now.
Okay.
So I wasn't, I'm sort of all over the map with some of this stuff because again, I'm throwing all these acronyms at you. I apologize.
Okay, so that's
Mhm.
the vehicle replacement. And then Michael, you had, I think your request on the UTV is just to make sure that we exhaust our appeal to our government for some free money. Is that fair?
More than, I don't look at it as free money. I look at
Fair
it as a responsibility that belongs to the
Fair
state.
enough. No, perhaps I was too crass with my choice of words. I apologize. And your point's accurate. Look, it's a state park, right? It's a state.
Well, it's it's a state railway.
Right. So it's a fair request. If we could just ask you, Chief, and Officer Kimball to bark at them one more time to see if.
Sure.
I certainly would be glad to get in touch with Representative Moschino,
Right.
and talk with her directly about it.
I can take care of that.
Okay.
It's usually the senator's offices who we deal with.
Used to be the case, yeah. We've got less push now.
I mean, part of the problem is, we need this now. It's
Yeah.
not, in 2 years. Or it's,
Chief, do you have any any sensation for the amount of calls we have? And maybe you can't reveal this, but amount of times it's a Cohasset resident versus an out-of-town resident.
Nah, we
Just,
don't,
I
we
mean,
don't
since
really-
we're bearing the cost, is okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the people
Just-
using those trails are Cohasset residents on the spur trail.
Yeah.
Wampatuck's a different story. You know, the issues we've had on the railroad tracks, it's been one
Yeah.
Cohasset person, two Hingham people.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who bikes there all the time, runs there all the time, and I know 50 people from Cohasset that are there all the time.
Yeah.
To me, just to save them, it's worth the money. So I mean, I don't really need more than that, just because I know the people there. So I've got to, you know, I understand how important it is. We also have, there's a really active group of young riders, Wampatuck Warriors. There's, you know, a very famous bike race that happens every year. I mean, there's so many things that happen in Wampatuck, and I wouldn't want to delay you guys operating, because I do think I was when you first bought this a few years ago, I was extremely skeptical. I was like, this seems like, you know, just kind of you know, police officers having fun, but the way you've used it has completely turned my mind around. I think it's been vital. So just operationally, I think it's necessary. So
Yes,
I
but
would prefer not to delay it.
there's two other towns that access Wampatuck, you know, Norwell and Hingham. And so I would want to talk with them too, to see if,
They have UTVs as well.
okay. So how is that, how are those assignments delegated?
As far as, well, I mean,
And so-
there's three different towns in there, so depends on what town the call is in.
All right, so is there anything similar to a mutual aid?
I suppose you could eventually get someone. You know, the same could be said for, you know, fire trucks and hoses. We don't really use the hoses we have much, so we should maybe use, you know, we could use someone else's. We have to be able to be self-sufficient. You know, it's one of those things, when you need it, you need it. And, you know, we had a we had a hunter that died in a tree stand behind the water company about 18 months ago, and we couldn't get in with our UTV. We had to put out a call for mutual aid, and it took probably 4 hours to get. It was Abington Fire that ended up responding eventually. So they came from Abington, but it took 4 hours. But you know, we're in a different. We're in a recovery operation, not a rescue operation. So recovery is a lot different. Rescue is that's immediate. That's, you know, someone needs to get to the hospital right away. So again, I don't, you know, these aren't. It's a lot easier not to ask for this stuff, but what do we do then?
Okay. I don't have any questions. I individually don't have any questions with regards to the need. I do respect Michael's request to make one last plea for, you know, for funding. And if it happens, great. If it doesn't, this request still needs to be addressed this cycle. It appears.
Brian, we've got a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
Out of respect for Michael, if you'd like, Michael, I'll split it into the three things, if that, yeah. But I would like to move forward, either on the motion on the table or on a different path forward.
Can I make a suggestion, Corey? Why don't we?
Yeah.
Unless people disagree, why don't we move the tasers in the NRO truck, where I think we have clarity and consensus? I mean, if everyone.
I'll just do one by one. So I'd like to
That's fine.
withdraw my motion.
That's fine.
Yeah, make a new motion that the Capital Budget Committee move to recommend the purchase of the NRO truck at a cost of $53,000.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Great. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Susan Franklin,
Susan Franklin, aye.
Michael Dick,
Mike Dick, aye.
Francine Lyons. You're on mute, Francine.
Sorry, Francine Lyons, aye.
Corey Evans,
Corey Evans, aye.
Ryan Host, aye. Great. So we're done with the truck.
I make a motion that Capital Budget Committee recommend the Taser lease program for year 2 at a cost of $20,235.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Great. Roll call vote. Susan Franklin,
Susan Franklin, aye.
Mike Dick,
Mike Dick, aye.
Francine Lyons,
Francine Lyons, aye.
Corey Evans,
Corey Evans, aye.
Brian Host, aye.
I would like to make a motion that the Capital Budget Committee recommend the purchase of the 4x4 Rescue UTV at a cost of $28,300.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. So in terms of further discussion, I would just like to get an answer to Michael's question individually, but we have a motion and a second at this point, so we can go ahead and vote it, I guess. Unless others agree that we should wait. Okay, let's go ahead and vote it. Susan Franklin,
Susan Franklin, aye.
Francine Lyons,
Francine Lyons, aye.
Corey Evans.
Corey Evans, aye.
Okay, this is done. I just by way of a majority vote, I do just want to reiterate, I think Michael's request was reasonable, but this is a need as well, so I'm going to go ahead and vote for it. Yeah, that's Brian Host, aye, and Michael Dick.
Abstain.
Okay, fair enough.
And I thank everybody, and I will be on the phone with Senator Bradley and Joe Moschino's office. First thing tomorrow, I'll email folks if there's
Okay.
any opportunity there.
Thank you, Bill. It's greatly appreciated. Having the votes is one thing, but to the extent there's money out there, we should always go grab it.
No, I agree. This is it's a state
Yeah.
problem.
We'll be more than happy to amend our motion.
Okay.
Please. Yeah. And yeah.
And
Mike, thanks for pushing it as well.
Yeah, and we will be back to this electronic parking item. I think we understand the need there, but I think we just, there's a feeling that needs to be weighed against all the other requests from the rest of the departments.
And I'm sorry I couldn't be more helpful with some of the back end questions, but I know some folks that can be.
Okay, and Bill, when that comes back around, just please make sure that you're comfortable and ready carrying the operating costs and the operating budget in the future years.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, folks. Off to the
Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
everybody. Thanks for your
Take care.
patience and
Bye-bye.
your explanations.
Thank you.
All right, the time is 8 o'clock. So we're a full hour over budget at this point. I assume I know the answer to this question, but would people like to proceed with any other items, or would you like to, to push those until to our next meeting?
Have we, I'm reopening our agenda.
Yeah, so we were going to go over
Oh,
the
oh, yeah.
capital plan, which I think we really need Michelle to do.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
We need to do liaisons at some point. And to the extent that, anyone feels the need to do a reorg at this moment, we can do a reorg, or we can do it after the ATM. And then we had minutes. Those were the items that were remaining on the agenda for tonight.
If we can
Were
do
there minutes
minutes
I missed?
quickly and knock it off, I would.
Let's do it.
Otherwise, we should adjourn.
No, I think we've all read the meetings. The minutes. We
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
I don't have them in front of me. But I did read them and I didn't have issues with them.
No, I didn't either.
Okay. So
Is this, for which meeting are the minutes? I don't have a,
Was it February?
it was 2 meetings ago.
the ones that Francine?
I have not submitted those yet. I have 2, including tonight, 3 minutes, which I've started to draft, but I haven't submitted yet.
That I saw a set. Were they yours, Corey?
Corey sent
I
them.
submitted-
Corey's.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were
Okay, that's what
Corey's.
we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was, what's the date on those?
I'm trying to find it in my email.
Outlook just has such terrible search. It just never gives me what I'm looking for.
It looks like you sent it on February 12th. It's the November 6th minutes, if I'm looking at the right one.
Okay. Considering I sent them, I should be able to find them, right? You figure.
November 6 minutes. There they are.
Got them. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, the only comment I'd make is that Well, I'm mentioned in the second sentence. I'm not mentioned as one of the attendees in the first sentence. So perhaps add me there.
Yeah, why not? You were there.
I was there. Or maybe my voice was coming in from afar.
So amended. Okay, B host is the first one in attendance.
I can be last. It's just it's fine too.
I'm not editing it again. Any other amendments?
No,
No.
I'm fine with it. Okay, for next week.
We need a motion for it.
Sorry, you're right. Do we have a motion to accept?
Move that we accept minutes of November 6th, 2023.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Great. Roll call. Susan Franklin,
Susan Franklin, I.
Mike Dick,
Mike Dick, aye.
Francine Lyons.
I wasn't there. I don't think I
Okay,
can.
sorry. Corey Evans,
Corey Evans, aye.
Brian Host, aye. All right, so the minutes are approved, and Francine will look to your 2024 minutes in our next meeting. And in terms of next week, dates, times, do we want Monday early? Do we want Monday at 7 or sorry, at 6? Wednesday, how do people look next week?
I have family that'll be in town. I'm not sure if they're leaving Monday afternoon or Tuesday afternoon. If they're
Is
leaving
Wednesday
Tuesday,
easier for you? Is Wednesday better for you, Michael?
generally I prefer Monday evenings, but
Okay.
if I would continue with Mondays since that's the schedule. But if that schedule changes, then I won't attend.
Okay, how do other people feel?
Monday's good for me.
Monday works for me too.
Okay, but Monday, if we do Monday, Mike, you will not be there. Is that my understanding?
No, there's a chance I won't.
There's a chance you
I-
won't.
Right. If my family stays an extra day, then I will not.
Okay, got it. Does that influence any thinking? Do we still want to shoot for Monday, or do people want to move to Wednesday?
What would be the topics of discussion for Monday? If there's something,
It's probably
if
going to
there's-
be it's certainly going to be the capital plan. We'll do the liaisons and hopefully the next wave of departments.
I don't know if we can get through any of those things without Mike.
I mean, my preference obviously is to have the whole committee, which is why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Let's do it Wednesday then, just to be
Wednesday,
sure.
Everyone's fine with Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay, do we want to shoot for 6 instead of 5? What's the preferred time? I'm fine with 5, I'm fine with 6, whatever works for others.
Let's
I've
do
enjoyed the
5:30.
5:00.
How about that?
5:30
5:30?
works. Yeah,
Yeah.
5:30.
Okay, 5:30 Wednesday it is.
Yeah.
All right, I will get that set up.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's better with you, Michael,
Thank you.
as you just clearly heard. Great, so Wednesday at 5:30, I'll get that set up, and I think that's it.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Anyone?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, roll call vote, Susan Franklin,
Susan Franklin, I.
Corey Evans,
Corey Evans, aye.
Mike Dick,
Mike Dick, aye.
Francine Lyons,
Francine Lyons, aye.
Ryan Host, aye. Time's 8:04. Thanks, everybody.
You.
Have a good night.